I try to do almost, I don't think I have a best, Whenever I was in gym class and they say, okay, we want you to do this. You ever been, training and they're like, we want you to just run at 25%. Or run at 75% of your ability. Or run at 100. Well, I was always running the same way. Slow. Because that was pretty much my 100%. Mr. Dunn was not going anywhere fast. That's why I can't be a criminal, I can't run from the cops. There'd be no point. I just stop and let them catch me. There's no point. Just don't tase me, bro. Or beat me to a pulp. What's going on with that? All right. Sorry, Java is downloading stupid updates for this stupid computer, and I hate it when you're using someone else's computer and they don't download, they don't keep things updated. So you have to click, click, click. Now, Ms. O. Let's see here. Let me see if I get this right. Dangsini Nazul Ihe Haji Moshanun Temada Malhasibsio. Is that? Nanun nega pali mahanun gusul algo. That, you understand me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
What do you say? Thank you.
Don't worry, that's for her and for me. Nothing untoward, nothing inappropriate. But, I love Korean, I love languages. Korean is one of those great languages. Beautiful language. Oh man, I hate you, Java. I should just uninstall Java. If it were my computer, I would. Not necessary, and it's full of bugs and all sorts of security risks. Get this on here. Believe it or not, we're like halfway through the course already. We only got I shouldn't say halfway, by the next, because there really is no half for this course because it's an odd number. But, the next class is the 9th. This is the 4th, right? Okay, well, I don't know. I'm sorry, because I'm still thinking about the rapture, And just remember, if I do disappear during class still ends at 12:30. Stay here, because I'll be with the Lord. I know you'll be down here with the fire and the brimstone and the burning hail and the demons chasing you. But, I'll be up with the Lord. I'll be raptured, so my clothes will still be here. I'll just disappear. My clothes... No, Miss Pungrat's okay. Move along, Mr. Dunn. So that's kind of like a positive thing, a happy thing. Maybe? No? Okay. Maybe Mr. Dunn's looking at the end of the class more than his students. All right. I know what will put a smile on your face. What puts a smile on your face, Ms. LaCicero? Chocolate. Snickers. Ooh. See, what kind of Snickers do we have? We got different Snickers minis. I think we got different. Oh yeah, we got almond Snickers. Ooh, that sounds. Any marzipan fan? Any marzipan? And we got peanut butter squared. And I think we just have the normal Snickers. Now, I know that some people will die if they have chocolate, or if they have wheat products, or gluten, or if they have, do not eat that if it's going to send you to the hospital. I don't want that on my conscience. What's the point? I saw it a mile away. You're going to turn...
I was just done.
Oh, thank you. So you're not going to,
Well, I know you
put
saw
it... Yeah, but you're not going to, put it away in your purse or something, or your bag, and, not... for the rest... See, she didn't even do that. She just put it on her lap. And she just doesn't care.
It's very obvious that we're on our phone.
Thank you. You can tell that... I know. It's brutal.
I have good notes. I take good notes.
Brutal.
I even highlighted stuff.
I know. Hey. Am I bringing the hammer? No. It's not like I'm some executive in a company or something, or a vice president or office manager. This isn't Dunkin' Donuts, you know.
Wish it was.
You wish it were.
I love Dunkin'.
You'd like to be working rather than sitting. Ooh, sorry.
Oh, no, eating Dunkin'.
My glands. I can't control my glands. These are sours. Watermelon. I checked the contents. There's sugar. So if you're diabetic, I don't know what to tell you. Corn syrup. Corn starch, which I don't think is the same as wheat gluten, so I'm not sure if that's going to harm anybody. Citric acid, tartaric acid, natural and artificial flavors, probably more artificial. And then a whole bunch of other stuff that's titanium dioxide. That sounds really healthy, but that sounds great. But anyways, this is for those people who cannot touch some of those other things. You can't weed out everything. So if you know you have some allergy to something, please, I joke, but I don't want to hurt you. I don't want that, you know. So, we're going to learn very quickly about the Bible today, because this is not a Bible course, but it is one of the major little help, you know. Come on, hey, you know. No. Okay, got to do it on my own. I'm a Pelagianist. Whoop. Ooh, there we go. But it is a major source, and people should know how to use it, because my experience a lot of times, people don't know how to use the Bible, look stuff up in the Bible. Only one?
Yes.
Yeah. That's enough?
Yeah.
All right. Sir? Oh, you look so cool with that. I love that shirt with the... Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, Miss Pongra. All right. Miss Valenti? Thank you, sir.
I got you.
Not that I just want you to be happy. Ms. Reen?
No, thanks.
Now you're mad at me?
I'm not mad. I just still want chocolate at 9 in the morning.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
To me, chocolate is like Jesus. Chocolate in the morning, chocolate in the noontime. Chocolate all day long. That's right, mock her. Maybe she'll... Mr. Karalakis! Where's that beard, Mr. Karalakis? How's that? Nah, Mr. Karalakis, I bet you could grow a beard in like 2 hours. Ms. Lehman? Nothing? Mr. Oh yeah, I gave it Mr. Don't tell me, Azawagi. Mr. Cicero.
Thanks.
You're fun. ML Major League Jeep?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You got it.
Yeah. I hate cheap people. Nothing.
You said you like chocolate.
No, but every time I'm with a person in the Jeep, they're always tailgating me or they're cutting me off, and people in Jeeps are very nasty people on the road. There you go, sir, Mr. Lembo. All right. You got a beard coming, Mr. Lembo. I like that.
I'm trying.
Ms. Miller. See, okay, come on that way. I certainly hope so. You're good. Well, I'm sure you are. God made you. But you don't want chocolate. And you don't want watermelon. Sours. Nope. Okay, Mr. Donuts. Okay. There you are, miss. And you can take both if you want. You don't just have to choose one or the other. You're welcome. Does anyone live on campus? Is anyone living on campus during the summer? Anyone? No? You're all going home or going somewhere? I'm just wondering how they feed people here. Do they still have the food? Oh, it is? Do you know when it opens during the day?
I could find out for you real quick if you like.
Nah, it's okay.
No, I wouldn't have to leave.
That's all right. No, I really don't care that much. I'm just, hello, Ms. Kievet. Ms. Kievet, there's chocolate up here. Or if you're allergic to chocolate and peanuts, there's watermelon sours. All right. If you change your mind, they're up here. I did bring them. Ooh, the almond one. I like almonds. Ooh, that's nice. So now you moved it from your lap back up there. She's incorrigible. The woman cannot be contained. All right. Let's go my thing here. Ms. Centeno. Ms. Delcide. Oh, yes, let's pray for her. She is... Well, let's pray for her that she is safe. She's on a trip. That's all I'm going to say. So I pray, Holy God, please remember our student, Ms. Delcide. Bring her back safely to us. Ms. Kievet, Mr. Lembo, Lucicero, Martinez. Boom. I told you she doesn't like me. Let's change rooms. Let's see if she might show up late. We'll, change rooms. She'll think I forgot again. Ms. Oliveira. Ms. Oliveira.
Yes.
Cardenas. No, Ms. Centeno. She's not here. Oh, she went on vacation. I don't remember her telling me. Don't remember. Okay. Martinez. Pongratz is here. Oliveira is here. I'm sorry, Ms. Oliveira. I thought you were Valenti and West. Okay. Hopefully everyone has a Bible by now of some sort. And you brought it with you. I would recommend bringing it to... The catechism, you don't need to bring all the time. I would recommend bringing a Bible all the time, because you never know when I'm going to pounce, and ask you to read from it. Okay? Don't be afraid of it. If it's not your thing, then just treat it like any other religious book, or any piece of literature. Treat it like you're reading Shakespeare or something. Okay? Don't be scared of it just because it's the Bible. Where do I want to put this? I wish I could put this on. Maybe I'll put it over there. Ha. It burns! It burns! He's a priest! He's a priest! Let her die! Oh, okay. No Exorcist band. Great horror film. I've been thinking about that recently. Maybe I have to... Ooh, what happened? Oh, sorry, Lord. The updates. Messing with my stuff. Uh-oh, is it shutting down the computer? What happened here? Uh-oh. I cast you out, Satan. I bind you and cast you away. Leave this computer alone. What's going on? Resume slideshow. All of a sudden it's... Yes, resume. I lost the mouse. There we go. Resume slideshow. Weird. Bet you it's Java. Okay. So this is the Bible. Whoops. Scripture we talked about. But, Yes, thank you. The word Bible, I probably should have put that in bigger script. Ta Biblia, you see the Greek word there, ta Biblia. The word Bible simply means books. That's all it means. All it means. It's come to have an official meaning for the Christian scriptures. And notice I say Christian sacred writings. Okay, there's a reason for that, which I'll get into momentarily. But the word ta Biblia, ta means the, Biblia means books. The word biblion means like a book. The singular, biblion. The plural, biblia. You know this already from the Greek words that we have in English, although people are becoming ignorant. And I don't want you to be ignorant, because you're going to be university students in a few weeks. In a way you already are. Criterion. The plural. The plural of criterion. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. I'm sorry, sir?
Criteria.
Yeah, criteria. Why, Ms. Reen? Why does it change to an in the plural? Why is it not criterions? You're right, but why does it change from an O-N to an A? You're not sure. Can I give you a hint? It'll be like Lassie. He's in the well, Ms. Reen. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, woo, woo. So Jimmy would be like rotting in the well because, you know, he's got to deal with Ms. Reen who can't understand a dog. Ms. Lehman? Why would criterion have a plural of criteria? What would be the plural of it? Why would it be criteria?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? I noticed I'm getting gray hairs in my beard. When I grow my beard out, I have gray hairs. I don't think I have gray hairs up here yet. But I'll give you time. I'll give you time. Does anyone want to volunteer a guess from what I might have just told you, Mr. Lembo?
Is it because in Greek the plural is with an A?
Yes, sir. The ending is what's called a neuter. It's a particular gender of noun, O-N, and neuter nouns create their plurals in an A. So, ah. So if I said, well, let's use the same example. Book. Libro. Libros in Spanish. Libros. But if I say animal, no O on the end, no A on the end, no E on the end. So what will be the plural in Spanish of animal? Animales. You have to know to add an ace. Why not just an os? Why not animalos? Well, then you have to know the history of the language and its relationship to Latin and the cases of Latin and where the plural is formed from and blah, 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 blah. And this is in a linguistics class, so I'll shut up and move on. What would it be in Portuguese? Animais? Animais. Huh? Okay. So we have these. Phenomenon. Someone is a sports phenomenon. Tanaka. At least he's the flavor of the month. What is he? Pitch for the Yankees, I think. New York Yankees. So he's the flavor of the month. Who knows how he'll finish out the season, whether he'll have a slump or whether he'll continue doing well as a pitcher, But he's a phenomenon. People take notice of him. You have to, you have to prepare for him if he's pitching because he's a good pitcher. So you have to have your batters all bat differently, or I don't know. I don't know what batters have. I don't play baseball, so I don't know what baseball guys have to look for. But I'm sure they have to look for certain things. Trying to figure out what kind of pitches he's going to do and how to hit them if they can. But let's say the Yankees have other good pitchers. Name some other good pitchers on the Yankees. Okay, Sabathia. Well, he's in the twilight of his career. He used to be. I refuse to call him CC. That's his nickname. He's Karsten. I'm not going to call him CC. I'm not going to play. No, you're fine. I'm not going to play those games of the sports reporter. Yeah, whatever. Karsten Sabathia. Who? Let's get someone now that we can all agree on is good. Anyone? Did the Yankees have anybody else who's up there? No. Should I try another sport? Should I try, I don't know, cricket? Or hurling? Hurling. My mother was showing me that they had an article in New Jersey Magazine. I was taking her to the doctor the other day, and she was looking at the magazine, and hurling. Guys running around with hurleys, which is an ancient sport from Ireland, which I would say that the Indians ripped off for lacrosse. But, but anyway, it's like lacrosse, except you have to balance the ball on a stick while you're running. So try that without your net, boys. And, they use wooden sticks and they hit each other, but they don't wear arm pads and shoulder pads and pads. I don't know what it is about America, but we love the gladiator look. I don't understand it, but we do. We just love to think we're gladiators or something. It's like Mad Max. Beyond Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leave. Okay, anyway. Apparently there are like 100 hurling clubs in the United States. There are a lot there. But I knew that. I mean, there are a lot of Irish people who come over here, and Gaelic football and hurling and stuff like that. Anyways, so a phenomenon. But what would the plural be, Mr. Balkovic? A phenomenon. See, I could tell in your face you knew it was wrong as you were saying it.
Yep.
So let's keep with the sports lingo here. Do a mulligan. Backtrack, okay? Knock the ball out of the grass. What would it be? Phenomenon? I'm not having a seizure, sir. Phenomenon? The O-N becomes an A, so it would be phenomena. Yes. Phenomenon. Phenomena. So you know these things already. If you don't, you know them now. Okay? Do not be lazy and say, okay, Mr. Dunn in class, okay, Mr. Dunn, it's an A plural. But then you go out that door and it's phenomenons and criterions. Please don't. Please. Because I will fall on you like a sumo wrestler, baby. No, we must preserve education. Be educated. Those are the plurals. Just because it's not easy, because they're from foreign languages, from other languages. So you just don't throw an S onto everything. Drives me crazy. So I spell my plural of videos. A video for me is OES, baby. OES. Why does potatoes and tomatoes have all the fun? Spread the fun. Spread the fun, Mr. Lembo. Put that OES on video or audio. See what happens. Go nuts, sir. So they are books. The Bible is called the books, the sacred books. And that's actually how the church describes the Bible. Did I put... No, not on this slide, but on the other slide I had that thing that said Nova Vulgata. The church has an official translation of the Bible, which she uses in her documents and stuff like that. It's in Latin. I have a copy. I like it. But anyways, and it's called, the vernacular version of the sacred books. So the church refers to the Bible as the sacred books, not shorthand the Bible. Okay, but the word, as if you notice, as it goes back, is plural. It's not one book, even though these pages are put between two covers because you have to keep them together. It's really not one book. It's a library. It's a library. And that needs to be remembered. Yes, was this library eventually put together as one book? Yes. And called the Bible? Yes. But the word itself betrays what it is. It's a library. It's still a conglomeration of books. And no book is exactly the same. Some books are historical and are meant to be history. The person is trying to tell history in a particular way. Okay, some books are total poetry, songs, hymns. Some books are a patchwork of all sorts of stuff, legends and little histories and little details and travel itineraries and all sorts of stuff just kind of put together, patched together. Some books are kind of philosophical, asking questions. Job, what is suffering? Or Ecclesiastes is like asking, what's the point of living the good life? Some books come out of left field. Song of Songs, the Song of Songs, the greatest of songs. Sex. The whole book is devoted to sex, sexual love. Between a bride and her groom. Let me specify that. Not between a groom and a groom, or a bride and a bride. Not between an unmarried man and an unmarried woman, or between a married man and an unmarried woman, or whatever, however it goes. Between a bride and a groom. I say this because I don't think it happens that much nowadays. Back in like the 90s, people were trying to fight against the biblical argument against, say, same-sex marriage. Well, Song of Songs is just about love. Well, yeah, but between a bride and a groom, if you read it. But it's all about sexual love, and it makes no qualms about that. It's not afraid of describing the emotions that a bride and a groom have for each other sexually. Because God made the parts. God made the, what do you call it? The plumbing, and made it work the way it works. Does God love your hand but hate your penis? Did God make your nose but not your breasts? Well, men have breasts too. But you know what I'm talking about. The sexual things that arouse people. Or your eyes, or, whatever. God did not bring you, sexual desire. It's not a bad thing. Be fruitful and multiply, God says to Adam and Eve. How were they going to do that? Well, you've got a boy and a girl. You do the math. It's not high calculus when you got to, you've seen the Blue Lagoon, what's her name with Brooke Shields, and man, it's weird to see her so old now. But you'll have that experience as well as some of the stars you grew up with start getting older and older. Because you'll remember, like, when, what you call it, what's the name, what's this band my little niece is all excited about. One Direction. But you'll be like, Harry will be turning 50, And you'll be like, wow, I remember when he was so young. You know? I mean, I remember watching Mel Gibson and Beyond Thunderdome with Tina Turner. Man, look at him now. Look at me. Anyways, so it is a library of books that have been put together for a particular purpose. At the basically, how do you find something in the Bible? Well, if you don't know, just go to a table of contents. And it'll give you a list of books, and if you search long enough, you should find the book that you're interested in. And then it will give you a page number. Okay? However, not all Bibles are the same. Bibles have different page numbers. So, when you quote something from the Bible, more often than not, people don't give page numbers. They give chapter and verse. I think I'll use this purple because it's here. It's different. Okay? So you have the name of the book, whatever book it is. You have a chapter reference. Okay? Usually books are at least one chapter. Some aren't. I'm trying to think in the Old Testament if Obadiah is the shortest one, but I think even Obadiah is one chapter. But in the New Testament, you have some that are so short, like the third letter of John, that I think you just do the verses and not the chapters. But anyways, conventionally you use a colon, and then you put the verse or verses that you're referring to. Okay? But, like in Europe, you'll see commas and stuff like that. You'll probably see more often than not a comma in Europe. In American biblical literature, you're going to see a colon. I don't think I've seen anything else. I'm trying to think. I'm racking my mind to see if I remember. Commas, colons. I don't remember seeing anything else. But, nevertheless, that doesn't mean there's not someone out there doing it differently. But that's the major thing. So if I tell you I want you to find something in the book of Exodus, chapter, 33, verse 2, look in the table of contents, find the book of Exodus, go there, start with chapter 1, keep flipping until you get to chapter 33, and then look at the little numbers, which are the verses, and keep going until you get to verse 2. Simple. It's not meant to be rocket science, and it's not unique to Christianity. If I were telling you the Quran, the same thing. The Quran is divided up into, I'll say chapters, but they're called surahs, which is different. It doesn't mean chapter. But anyways, we Westerners, to understand the Quran, we divide it up into chapters and verses like the Bible, because that helps us. But traditionally, the Quran is divided up into names. You have the ant, or what else? The women, or something like that. So, if I were talking about the Quran, I might say, turn to the ant. And, most Muslims would know where that is, turn to it. But we Westerners now, say, go to Quran, go to Surah, 34, again, so go to Surah 33, verse 2. And you flip there. And in Qurans, they still have the names. They'll have the traditional names for each surah. Okay? Christians kind of had to do the same thing before they had chapters and verses. If a guy were preaching on the Bible, he'd say, go to the story, the adulteress. And people would know that that's probably in the Gospel of John, where Jesus encounters a woman caught in the act of adultery. Or go to the loaves and the fishes. So people would know where to go, because they didn't have chapters and verses in the beginning. People knew the stories. They knew where they were. Okay? So that's how you find your way around the Bible in the simplest sense. This is, don't worry about catechism, the Catholic Church, etc., and so forth, unless I want you to. Do I have that on? Where did I put my notes? They've disappeared. Whoops. That's rather embarrassing. Maybe I didn't take them out. Oh, I didn't take them out. Here, my friends. Oh, okay, yes, I do actually. If you have your catechism, you can take it out. I actually do, because see, that's what notes are good for. They remind me. So I don't forget. Take out your catechism. The catechism is actually even easier to navigate than the Bible. As I told you, maybe at the beginning, I think I told you when we went over the syllabus, how do you find something in the catechism? Ms. Valenti, how would you find something in the catechism? If I told you to find CCC, Catechism of the Catholic Church 108, where would you look? Good, okay. Good, yes. Table of contents, good. Because I think they're there as well.
Would you just look to 108?
108 what?
Like not the page, the verse.
Okay, as Mr. Donalewski said, the paragraph. Yes, the verse, the paragraph. Why don't you do that for us, Ms. Valenti? Because you seem loath to touch the catechism. It won't bite. It's not like that book from Harry Potter, you know? That little book that would bite. You had to, you had to pet the spine to make it be nice and open for you. No? That's too old a reference, Harry Potter? Harry Potter movies is too old a reference? You don't know that? Okay. What do we got? 108. What do we got, Ms. Valenti?
Still, the Christian faith is not a religion of the book. Christianity is the religion of the Word of God. A word which is not written in mute word, but the word which is incarnate and living. If the Scriptures are not to remain a dead letter, Christ, the eternal Word of the living God, must through the Holy Spirit open our minds to understand the Scriptures.
Thank you very much. Is that your Bible?
Yes.
I notice you're keeping it at a distance.
I don't want it to fall. I have a notebook on it.
Because you had your cat. Oh, okay. All right. Incarnate, in case you don't know what that word is, you'll know what the word means much later. Incarnate. Those of you who speak Spanish and other Latin-based languages like Portuguese. Carne. Carne. What does I can't do my R's, I'm sorry. Carne mean, Ms. Oliveira? Meat. Flesh. Meat. Okay? But it also has a sense of flesh, which means meat from German. Fleisch. In English. Flesh. Okay? So, in the flesh, to become... To become flesh, to incarnate, or to be incarnate. Okay? Oh, that's another bugaboo I've got to... Well, maybe I'll save that for profit. In the flesh, okay? To become flesh. To become flesh. In the creed, they translate this as and became man, but in the Latin, it's, let's see. No, I've got to remember. I haven't done the Latin in a long time. De Spiritu Sancto ex Maria Virgine et incarnatus est. Incarnatus de Spiritu Sancto ex Maria Virgine et homo factus est. Was incarnate of the Holy Spirit, or by the Holy Spirit, of the Virgin Mary, and was made man. So they do say incarnate. But to say that Jesus was made man is kind of saying the same thing as well. He came in the flesh. So, the Catechism wants to point that out. I wonder to whom the Catechism might be referring. It might be referring to a particular group with the reference to religion of the book. No? 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 With the Amal Kitab or the, no? Anyways, I think someone had Islam on the mind when they wrote that thing, because but not just Muslims, but also Christians. A lot of Christians can view Christianity as this, the book, and this is what you refer to, They might talk a lot about Jesus, but it's always going to come back to the book, You always want a copy of the book hanging around, okay? Which is a good thing. I don't have a problem with that. As I said, I've hung around with these kinds of Christians for a long, long time in my life. They've saved me many times. They gave me my interest in the Bible, They asked me questions about the Bible I couldn't answer, so I started looking. I actually started, I looked and said, what's in here, I'm curious. So I didn't just do it for confirmation class to make priests happy, and I found out it was a fascinating book in its own right, or books, I should say. Ms. Girardi, did you go to church this Sunday? What did they preach about? David and Goliath. Interesting. I wonder what they'll preach about this Sunday.
They're doing a new series this summer called Pop Songs.
It's called what?
Pop Songs. They're turning pop songs into scripture, bringing out the meaning of things.
So kind of like a weird version of Weird Al Yankovic or something.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know Weird Al Yankovic?
No.
Are you kidding me? Well, you'll hear some of Weird Al Yankovic. Does anyone know Weird Al Yankovic? The guy's a genius. I mean, I still remember the day that Eat It came out. Genius. I wish he did more music videos, though. I think the music videos are what kind of sells the song sometimes. But anyways. And there's a Christian version of what he does called apologetics, where they take, but I don't know. They take modern songs and turn them into Christian. I guess that's what they're talking about. Maybe you'll encounter some apologetics tunes. Apologetics with an X at the end, not a CS, So you're doing a new thing, taking this. Okay, interesting. That is why if you go to a Catholic church or other ancient churches, Mr. Karolekis Church, Greek Orthodox, my church, Ukrainian Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Syriac Orthodox, Coptic Orthodox. I was thinking about Egypt recently because they had an election, and hopefully they will, God willing, may you bring peace to Egypt, Lord. I hope there will be. I'm not sure if it's the ideal situation, but who am I? I'm just a man with opinions. You're in charge, Lord. I pray for peace for the people of Egypt. Believe it or not, there are tens of millions of Christians in Egypt. It's not a Muslim country. It's a mixed country. There are tens of millions of Muslims, but there are tens of millions of Copt Christians. Copt from the Greek word for Egypt, Aegyptos. Copt comes from the Greek word Aegyptos for Egypt. Yeah. And they've been there for like 2,000 years. I mean, Egypt was a Christian country very early. Christianity entered Egypt very, very early. Yes.
What does it mean?
Copt, Egypt, the Egyptians. So the Copt Orthodox Church, or Coptic Orthodox Church, Egypt, under Pope Tawadros, I believe his name is now. I think his name is Tawadros, Pope Tawadros. Pope, he's called a pope. He's a patriarch, he's the head of their church. Pope is not a unique term. All bishops were called popes early on. Papa just means a father. Okay? And for some reason, well, in the West, the term kind of got narrower and narrower until it just meant the Pope of Rome. the Papa of Rome, Il Papa. And but the Copts kept the tradition of calling their patriarch, their leader, the Bishop of Alexandria, he is, the city of Alexandria, Pope. So he's Pope Tawadros, His Holiness Pope Tawadros, which is fine with me. I don't mind. Yeah, tens of millions there. What was there going on about that? Egypt. Copt.
And also, I think in Lebanon.
Huh?
And in Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Maronites. There are Maronite Christians in Lebanon. A lot of them there. Oh yeah, Christians all over the Near East from these ancient churches. Yes, sir.
Are they, like, associated with the main, like, Italian, or not Vatican?
The Copts?
Yeah.
Not the Coptic Orthodox.
This is the Pope, so that's why I was like...
Oh, no. No, it's just a tradition. Custom. All bishops were called popes early on. Because it just means a father figure. A father figure. And the tradition changed. It became, in the West, the word pope became limited to the guy in Rome.
But they're still linked to the Vatican?
Nope.
No, they're not.
Nope. Pope Tawadros is not. But there are Coptic Catholics. There are members of the Coptic Orthodox Church who have entered in communion with Rome. And yeah, Pope Francis would be their pope. They do have a patriarch. I forget the name of the Coptic Catholic patriarch, though. They don't call him a pope because you don't want to confuse the issue. Because, you know, people from Italy would be like, hey, Pope, Pope, what are you saying? Hey, oh! Might have a little fight and a lot of hand waving, you know. Hey, we got the Pope, you got a Pope. Actually, every diocese has a Pope, a Papa, the bishop. But, times have changed and the word has changed. And so it's not usually associated with anyone other than the Papa of the Roman diocese. But the Copts still keep that tradition, that old tradition, yes, I see it, for their leader, their patriarch, who's Pope of Alexandria and Egypt. But there are some Egyptian Christians who are in communion with the Catholic Church. Not a lot, but some. Actually, maybe there's more than I think. But anyways. But just, because we think of Egypt as, and sometimes, that's the way the Near East can be presented. You mentioned Lebanon, sir, Mr. Al-Duhi. Okay. Even Palestine, Israel, Egypt, Iraq, Syria. Well, that's where all the Muslims are. And they're always angry, aren't they? When they ever show them on television, they're always protesting something, angry about something. Isn't that when's the last time on the news, Miss Kevitt, you showed we're going to show you some happy Muslims from Egypt. Yay! I'm happy. No, they're usually interesting the images we're shown. I wonder what images they're shown of us. But there are actually many, many Christians in those areas as well who have been there for a long, long time. So, the ancient churches, Church of Rome, Coptic Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. I probably shouldn't throw the Russian Orthodox in there because they're only been part of the faith for 1,000 years. Greeks have been a lot longer. If you go to their church, it's going to be a little bit different, isn't it? You're going to have readings from the Scriptures, yes? You're going to have readings from the Scriptures, culminating in what? What is going to be the high point of the Scriptures? What reading is going to be from which books? There are 4 books of the Christian Bible that are supremely important and get pride of place at Catholic Mass, at Divine Liturgy. In the Eastern churches, Mr. Karolekis, during the little entrance, the priest will, it's the priest, will carry out this book for people to touch and bless themselves, kiss. It's accompanied, when the priest reads from it, it's accompanied by candles and incense. Don't do that for other books of the Bible. The priest doesn't do that when he reads from the letters of Paul. The Gospels. And what are they, sir? Good, sir. Excellent. I appreciate that. And what are they? What are they about? Jesus. Oh, Jesus. I love you. Jesus. Okay? Yes, Christianity is a religion with a book, with scriptures, sacred writings. That's not all it is. That's what the Catechism is trying to say. It is not a religion of the book, it is a religion of a person, a man who existed, who was real, who was the Messiah of the Jews and the Son of the God of Israel. So, yes, there are other scriptural readings, but always, 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 for Christian worship in the Catholic Church, the high point is the reading about Jesus from the Gospels. That's why if you go to a Catholic Mass, it's treated differently. The Lord be with you. That's a Catholic Church for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And with your spirit, a reading from the Holy Gospel according to, let's say, St. Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. You cross your mind, your mouth, your heart. There's symbolic value to that. That's how it's done in most churches. Actually, the best way to do it is, as the Eastern churches do it, is that there should be a gospel procession with the gospel book, not walking from the altar to the lectern. As you see, come on. They can, believe it or not, the priests and the deacons can actually leave the sanctuary and move amongst the people. You believe that? Believe it or not. So they could actually take the gospel and have what's supposed to be a procession, which means they take the gospel and they move out amongst the people and come back, accompanied by candles and incense. That's what the church expects, is supposed to be done. You see that done most on Sunday? If you go to St. Aloysius? Anybody? No one want to volunteer? Go out on a limb? No? Yes? Yes? No? Ms. Miller? You see it done? Have you ever seen it done?
Not all the way in the...
But you have seen with the incense and the candles and...
No.
Ever. Interesting. Ever. And sung, by the way. And sung. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. In those days, Jesus... It's supposed to be sung. That's what the church wants. That's what the Second Vatican Council asked for 50-some years ago. That's what Catholics used to have. You had to have at least one sung Mass on a Sunday. Had to. It was part of church law. Somewhere along the way it just kind of, I don't know, they don't do it. Yes? Really? Used to do it.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know.
Change pastors?
Deacon.
And it just kind of, yeah. I don't think it's malicious. Go ahead. Are you raising your hand or are you just, hi?
Me?
Yeah.
Rubbing my eyes.
But your hand's like that. It looks like you're raising your hand.
No.
Holla.
I feel like that's the right way.
Oh, good to know. Thank you. Appreciate that. No, I don't think it's malicious. I think it's like more monkey see, monkey do, you get out there and you see how the other priests are doing it, and you just don't think about it, Whereas before, they knew to do it and whatever. Ask them why they don't do it. I do. I love putting priests on the spot, baby. Why not? Why don't you do it? Do you know you're supposed to do it? Do you know it says, Second Vatican Council say, it's the sung liturgy, mass, celebration, And if they do, then the question is, well, why don't you do it? That's where the priests usually get mad at me. That's where they usually get mad at me. And I'm not mean. I'm just asking questions. It's like going to the doctor. You ask the doctor all sorts of questions, don't you? So why can't I ask a priest, It says here, do this. Why aren't you doing it? I don't know. I'm not saying you're a bad man. I'm just asking, why aren't you doing it? Yes?
I asked the priest if he could bless the motor oil in my car.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Now, why are you telling me this?
Because I ask questions too.
That sounds like you're asking for a favor, though, Ms. Cardenas. Excellent. Now, why did you do that?
Huh?
Why did you do that?
Because I just like my car a lot. He said if I bring it to the parking lot, he'll do it.
Now, did he bless your whole car or just the oil?
Oh, no, he didn't do it yet.
Oh, he hasn't done it yet?
I said I'll bring it sometime.
Okay. Because in the Book of Blessings, there's a specific blessing for automobiles, so it can bless your car. Maybe that's what it is. Huh? Well, it's going to be hard because if the car is blessed, well, he's not making it blessed, but blessing its use. Because if it were really blessed, then, to get rid of it, you either have to burn it up or bury it. That's going to be kind of hard. But I don't know how you drive, so burning it up might be a possibility. Yeah. Yes. Anyways. So.
What does it say that the priests are supposed to do it?
Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 65. Document on the sacred liturgy. They even issued a long instruction on how to do it in the mid-60s during the council. And when I was in the seminary, we even took a course, liturgy and the music and the liturgy, how to choose the hymns and whatnot and stuff like that.
This is for blessing?
Huh?
This is just for blessing?
No, it's part of worship. The whole liturgy is actually supposed to be sung. It's an aberration that it's spoken. It's not supposed to be like read from a telephone book. It's supposed to be sung. And if you get the Roman Missal, which I also have a copy of, see, that's why priests hate me. They get angry with me because I also have their books, It's so I know. So they can't blow smoke in my face and tell me it's incense. They actually provide the music in the Roman Missal for the priest to sing. Interesting. Yes?
How about when they're blessing the body and blood of Jesus?
I mean, consecration?
Right.
They can do that.
I've seen that before.
Well, that's been sung. Yes, that's very, I understand it's very rare, but yes, you can sing the Eucharistic prayer. That can be done, yes. So that's fine. That's an oddity, though, in the Western Church. In the Eastern Church, yes, that part of the Mass is actually sung. The priest will say everything else silently, but when he changes the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, he'll say, make this bit, say, I have to get the tune right because I'm not the priest. Take, eat, this is my body, broken for you for the forgiveness of sins. And people will say, amen. You respond, amen. Take, eat, this is my blood, shed for many, for the forgiveness of sins. So it can be sung, yes. Interesting. I just throw these questions out. I like to be a troublemaker, a gadfly.
Yeah, but if you don't ask questions, wouldn't that, weaken your faith? Because then what if you don't understand something?
I usually find it makes the people I ask the questions of angry.
I know, that's what I'm saying. That makes no sense, though. If you're not going to ask questions, then what if...
Well...
Or if it deters you from your faith. You're like, if I can't ask questions, I don't get an explanation. What's the point?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why, ask any questions you want of me, baby. I'll try not to get angry. Try not, and of God as well. God, Ms. Souder, Ms. Reen, is a big boy. He can handle the worst question you can throw at him. He can handle it. Tell him you don't believe, or have problems of belief, or disagree, or are angry with him. He can handle it. Can handle it. If he can handle magnetars and quasars and pulsars and dark matter and dark energy and can handle a question from you on planet Earth, I think so. I think God is big enough for that. I don't think God's like, they don't believe in me anymore. Oh, Jesus, get the fan. Oh, Holy Spirit, hold my hand. Oh. I'm only going to hang out with the Mormons. They believe in me. Okay. Jesus is the focus, not even this book. Okay? I'm not a follower of this book, even though I believe it's God's revelation. And believe God is the author of it with the human beings who wrote it. It didn't die on the cross for me. The Bible didn't raise up from the dead for me. Okay? But because but Jesus is the focus. So at a Catholic Mass, you're going to focus on Jesus in the readings. Which readings deal with Jesus? The Gospels. After the readings, you're going to have the offering of Christ's body and blood. Now, I'm not going to say which is more important, but the other one's kind of more important. But anyways, because you don't need a priest to read from the Bible. You don't need a priest there to read from the Bible, but you do need a priest for the Lord's Supper. So it kind of tells you that which is more important for the church. Okay, and the church doesn't have Bible readings every day. Bible readings are part of the Lord's Supper, reading from the Scriptures. But the main thing is to remember Christ's sacrifice on the cross, and that the one who died on the cross is no longer dead, but is alive and will return. And all these ideas are bound up in the Mass if you look for them and listen to them. Listen to what the priest says sometimes. Listen to what he prays sometimes. Don't zone out. I understand we have problems and we're tired or we're thinking about something else or praying about something else. That's fine. But every now and then, listen to what the priest is saying at the altar. Because he'll hit these points, Jesus died on the cross. Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus is coming again. Etc. and so forth. Okay? So that's an important point. Christianity is not a religion of the book. It is the religion of a man, Jesus the Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. That is who the church follows. We happen to have sacred writings about Jesus, thank you God. But what if we didn't? What if we didn't? What if nobody ever stopped to write anything down? They just kept telling stories. Someone might say, yeah, but we do. Okay, good. But what if we didn't? All right, that's not, this book is a beautiful thing. Should read it assiduously, which means a lot. Assiduously. It should be a resource for theology. Okay? A lot. This is a fancy way of saying a lot. But ultimately, I'm following that dude, not this book, as good as it is. All right? The Bible is not Jesus. And you might find that out when you're at a Protestant church. I've noticed that. How often they don't, I'm not saying they don't believe in Jesus. God bless them. They brought me to, the people I knew who were Protestant Christians brought me to Jesus in many ways, and I'll always be grateful for that. But it always puzzled me how little they actually spoke of Jesus. If you went to their Sunday service, the reading would be like from one of the letters of Paul, the apostle. I would think that the first reading, the only reading you'd want to deal with would be Jesus, about Jesus, the Gospels. And then bring in Paul, Peter, Jude, Revelation, all, other stuff, or the Old Testament, have some reading from Exodus or something. And then and not even that, it wouldn't even be a reading, it would be like a passage, just like a couple of verses, and then the pastor would preach on that and apply it to people's lives. And, the sermons were oftentimes quite good, certainly better than a lot of priests I could name. But that did always puzzle me, because in the Catholic Church was clear, it's leading up to the Gospels, a story of Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus in the morning, Jesus in the noon, Jesus all day long. When the day is done, when the day is done, when the day is done, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, when the day is done, give me Jesus. You gotta love those old Negro spirituals. They just go right to the heart. Oh, give me Jesus. Because of course, imagine what those people were doing. Huh?
That one girl just like looking around like, who's singing to me?
I'm singing to him, sir. I'm always singing to him, and also to his mother. But thank you. It's not that great though. It's not. Yeah, but if I went into the music department, they would. But whatever voice I have, I sing it for the Lord. But think about that song. Think about where it came from. The people who wrote it. At the end of the day. Well, what were they doing during the rest of the day?
Having fun.
They were not, sir. They were not. These were slaves. These were people, these Negro spirituals are called Negro spirituals for a reason. They come from like the 1800s. Where even if, thanks to Abraham Lincoln, you were suddenly freed, well, there were ways to keep you a slave. You looked at a white woman the wrong way, that's a crime. Go to jail for the rest of your life, and then you're back to slavery. Oh, we human beings. So yes, it can be kind of funny, but give me Jesus at the end of the day, because that's all they had sometimes. That's just all they had. They had the hope in Him that He would make things all right. And He has. And He has. Okay. So, let's see all I want to do about that. Yes. What if we didn't have the writings about Jesus? Well, what else do we have? What else will we have? I mean, is the Bible all about Jesus? Or are there other writings in here? I mean, where are the writings, the Christian writings in the Bible? Do they come first? Or is it all Christian writings? What comes first in the Bible? The Old Testament. Who wrote that? The Jews, the Hebrews. It's good to be a Jew. Good to be a Jew. Of course, Jesus was a Jew, and the writers of the New Testament were all Jews, but they didn't have a New Testament. When Jesus was walking around, it wasn't like Jesus could drop off a copy of the New Testament. Hey, I'm Jesus, you know me? Hey, well, here, read my book. Got my book? Here's my book. No royalties. Don't worry about it. Just, hey, here you go. Hey, stop. You know? What did they have? They had the writings of the Jews. That's what Jesus was reading from in the synagogue. That's what was being read in the synagogue. That's what the earliest followers of Jesus were reading as Scripture. They did not have a New Testament. They did not have a New Testament. Yet, Christian writings will be written later. But the Bible, as understood, even in the New Testament, you know, if you look when they're quoting from the Bible, they're quoting from the Jewish Scriptures. That's why the Jewish Scriptures come first in the Christian Bible. The revelation to the people of Israel, the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, however you want to call them. And then eventually, when Christian Jews who believed in the Messiah decided, thank God, maybe I'll write down some of these stories we've heard about Jesus. Or maybe I'll write some letters to my fellow Christians addressing problems and whatnot. You know, people, and then someone had the great idea to collect these things, and they were added on to the Old Testament. Notice the New Testament does not come first. It comes later, because it's added on. You would think it would come first if Jesus is important. Okay? But, and this is a point that I will harp on, Jesus was a Jew. Not like you, unless you are a Jew. Then he was like you. But Jesus was a Jew. Jesus was a Jew. Jesus was a Jew. Not like you. You're not a Jew. What are you going to do? Unless your mother was a Jew. Then you're a Jew. It's all copacetic. Yeah? But the church did not reject God's revelation to the Jews, because Jesus accepted it as revelation, God's revelation to the Israelites, because he was a Jew. You know, well, he gave it to them. You know? He's not going to then say, throw that in the garbage can, all out. Oh, that stuff I told you in Leviticus. Recycle. No. So the church, of course, following the example of Jesus and his followers, accepts the Scriptures of the Jews. Yes. Not right now. In a moment, friend. In a moment. Hence, the Bible, the books, are divided into two sections. We have a Jewish section of writings called the Old Testament, yes, by Christians. Jews do not call it that, because for them it's still valid, you know, it's still concurrent, you know. But that's what Christians call it, the Old Covenant. And when you had Christian writings added on to the Jewish writings, they came to be called the New Covenant or the New Testament. So you have two separate sections, collections of sacred writings. One for the Jews and one for Jews who accepted Jesus as the Messiah. So if you get a Jewish Bible, which I have, in Hebrew and English, this is not it, but, you know, you'll find that there's no New Testament, you know. It's the Old Testament. That's all it is. Okay? Because they don't believe Jesus was the Messiah, so the New Testament has no relevance for them. But for followers of the Christ, Messianists, Christians, these writings are also considered God's revelation and added on. The word testament means a covenant, an agreement, a contract. Okay, like the last will and testament. What is it? It's like a contract between you and your progeny. You know, when I'm gone, when I die, I'll leave so-and-so this, so-and-so that. I hate him, so he's cut out of my will. You know, stuff like that. But it's like a contract, and the law treats it as a contract. You are now due these things by right, because it's there. And if you're left out of the contract, well, you're screwed. You can try and fight a will in court, But, if someone decides, I don't want to leave this person any money, cut them out of the will, well, what are you going to do? Yeah, but I'm his son. So, it's a contract. He left you out of it. He made a testament with other people. And they, by right, it's theirs absolutely. It's not like they have to share, if I'm given money, it's not like I have to share it with other members of the family. If I'm given all the money in a will, it's mine absolutely. That's the contract. Will in the testament. Okay, so that's all it is. It's using this old Latin term in legalese for covenant, agreement, contract. So the old covenant, the new covenant. I don't know if I get into that later. I'll mention it now. I don't know if I get into it later, so I better mention it now. Old and new. Let's see, we got more of the almond ones. Come here, my little friend. Old and new. Old is not understood as if irrelevant, like passé. Doesn't matter anymore. We got a new and improved. That just means new. Those were the scriptures that were there before. They're older. And then we got the new scriptures. They're written later, so they're new. Right? It's almost like Windows XP versus Windows 7. Doesn't mean Windows XP won't work on your computer. You know what I'm talking about, right? Operating systems, Microsoft. Yes? No? You got it? But you should probably, Windows 7 will probably work better. So they say, although Microsoft always seems to have all sorts of patches and fixes and workarounds, and they never seem to get it right. I wonder why. I mean, what if you went to a car salesman, bought a brand new car, and you said, okay, brand new, perfect, except one of the wheels is wobbly. But don't worry, in a few weeks we'll have a fix for that. We'll get you a new wheel. Or, the wiring's not very good, but don't worry, in a few months we're going to do a recall and fix all the wiring. Why? I don't understand why that logic doesn't, you'd sue them. You say you sold me a lemon. But apparently, when you buy an operating system, all bets are off. Yes, sir?
Is that confused a little bit? When did it go from, because he I don't think he would name, the new faith is Christianity.
He did not, sir, no.
So how did that come to be? Like when was it established, okay, Jewish faith is different than, or the name was given on us?
From the perspective of the church, never. That Christianity is not, and Christianity is not really a different religion. It's an outgrowth of Judaism. It's the fulfillment of Judaism. It's Judaism that has been fulfilled by the coming of the Messiah, which is what the Jews were expecting. However, many, if not most Jews, chose not to believe that. They chose not to believe he wasn't the Messiah. Okay? If you want a particular date, it's hard to say. Maybe in the first couple of centuries, maybe when there were more non-Jews who were entering this community than there were Jews anymore.
I thought maybe one of the disciples that was traveling.
Nope, they were all Jews. Couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a Jew. Mary was a Jew. Joseph was a Jew. St. Peter the Apostle, Jew. Believe it or not.
But Christianity has to be started by the Jews, though. So it's like some people just went over. Some people believe that he was Savior, and some people didn't. That's it.
Christianity wasn't started by anybody except the Christ. The Christ. Once Jesus appears and begins his ministry, you have this, what appears to be a new movement within Judaism. And people didn't recognize, this is hard to kind of fathom, but people didn't necessarily recognize that while Jesus was alive. Where you have to remember that. We're looking at it 2,000 years later with 2 billion people on the planet in a country whose history is highly Christian. Okay? Whether people believe that or not is another thing, or believe in this kind of Christianity or not is whatever. But you know what Christmas is, you know? Whereas you don't know what, you know, I don't know, Diwali is. Although if you live in Jersey City, you might know what Diwali is. And Holi, you know? But if you're in India, you'd have Diwali, Festival of Lights, and you know everything about it, the customs and stuff like that. You know the religious context, you know. You know, but Christmas, maybe not so much. You might know it's connected with this Jesus guy, but what? You know? So whether you like it or not, we have a Christian history, because a lot of people in our history were Christians, and are Christians, Christian believers. But there was no Christianity. They didn't call themselves Christians. Okay, the word Christian, believe it or not, was applied by pagans. Okay? Because they were still going to the synagogues. These people were still worshiping at the temple, the Jewish temple, going to synagogue, praying. But they also had their own ceremonies given to them by Jesus, who they believed was the Messiah, the Christ, that they were doing off on their own, like a special meal. There's a special meal they had. We call it the Lord's Supper, but I don't know what they called it necessarily. The breaking of the bread, I shouldn't say that. The breaking of the bread was the most common term they called for it. But it was actually to distinguish this group of people from Jews that pagans had to say, started calling this group the Messianists, the Christianoi, to distinguish them from other Jews who did not believe in Jesus as the Mashiach or Christos. Okay? Because for pagans, it was all Jew. You know, for the pagans, it was just one Jew arguing with another Jew over something called a Christ. And we'll see this later. They did not understand Judaism, and they certainly didn't understand the belief for a Messiah. So when they heard Jews, you know, arguing over this Yeshua, who was the Christos, the Mashiach, I say, okay, so they're the Christians, they're the ones who follow this Christ, and these are the Jews who don't. And that's how you start getting this division, I'd say, in the name at least. But even Jews weren't like going around saying, oh yeah, you know, Judaism and stuff like that. You know, Judaism was a late term to develop. Okay, people didn't identify themselves like we do, like what we so commonly do now. Okay? There were a number of terms for what the Christians were doing. They called it the way of the Lord Jesus. Okay, that was an ancient term for what they were doing. And if you asked them, they probably wouldn't have any name for it. I'm just a follower of Jesus the Messiah. You know? Anyways, so if you ask when did it change, so I'd say probably when there were more non-Jews, because then you have a cultural change. Although the beliefs didn't, well, as you'll see, the beliefs develop, but they're still rooted in Judaism. Right? Okay, so the first group of writings, which are the Jewish group of writings, are usually, I'm using the Jewish division. The division in your Bible, your Christian Bible, is different, but they're the same writings, yeah. It's just, I find it easier. There are 3 classes of writings that the rabbis distinguished, the most important of which was the first part, the Torah, the teaching. Okay, that's all Torah means. And this would be the equivalent of like the Gospels for Christians. The 4 Holy Gospels, you've got the 5 books of Moses. The Torah. And who can name them for me? Who wants to give me one of the books of Moses? Genesis. Excellent, sir. Another one? Exodus.
Numbers.
Oh, somebody else, Mr. Donaleski. Leviticus. Excellent. Was that Mr. West?
No.
Who is that? Mr. Balkovic?
Yes.
Okay. Leviticus.
Numbers.
2 more.
Numbers.
Who's saying Numbers? Mr. Rizvi?
Yes.
Numbers. And what's the last one? Don't give people the answers, Mr. Donaleski. I'm 41 years old, but I got good ears. Is O? What's the last one? Begins with a D. D. Deuter. You're almost there. Anyone remember the ending? Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy. Okay, so these 5 books are the Torah. You go to a synagogue, they have a tabernacle, a box in which they keep the Torah scroll, which has these 5 books on it in Hebrew. And if you go to a synagogue, they will have these Torah scroll covered in precious cloth with bells on it. Anyone been to a synagogue? Ever? No? Me neither, but I've seen pictures. I've seen videos and stuff. And they'll take it out of the box, the tabernacle, and they will process around with it. And while they're processing around with it, Jews will put out their prayer cloths and try to touch the Torah to bless themselves. And then they will put it down and unroll it to the portion where they last left off. They just read it continuously. Okay, they don't skip around. They just read continuously. And they chant and they sing it. I don't know Hebrew. I mean, whatever. But I don't know how they chant. But if you ever want to hear them chant it, go on YouTube, put in Chazan, or put in Torah chanting, synagogue. Chazan is the one who chants it. There's a procession. People try and touch the holy book to bless themselves. The book is chanted, it's sung. What does that sound like? Buddhists. Yeah. Did someone say Buddhists? Who said Buddhists?
I did.
That's a Rizvi. So the monks. So the Christian monks. What made you think of Buddhists? They do chant, sir. Yeah. Mr. Karolakis. I'm getting the stink eye. All right. A procession with the holy book. The holy books, I should say. People touch it to bless themselves as it's going around in procession. The reading is sung to the congregation. Does that sound like Mr. Karolakis? God bless you. Does that sound like in your experience? I went over it in great detail not like 40-some minutes ago. Yes, sir.
In which you say they should process through the court, through the people, but they really don't. Yeah,
but some churches do, like Eastern churches. Ukrainian Catholic Church, we do. I don't know, they always use incense in the synagogue. I don't know if they ever use incense in the synagogue. I think that's reserved for the temple. And they don't have the temple, so no purpose for it. You asked the question. Christianity, Judaism. When was there a separation? In some ways there was no separation. Jesus wasn't reinventing the wheel. These people came out of Judaism, and a lot of Christian worship is predicated on Jewish worship. They didn't need to recreate the wheel. It was there for them. The synagogue was a place where you read the scriptures, you had procession of the scriptures, okay? You sang the scriptures to the congregation. There might have been as well another reading from the prophets. There usually was. But unlike in Christian churches, it would come after the Torah reading, not before. You might have an interpretation. We could call it a sermon, but it wasn't really a sermon. It was more of someone trying to explain the text because a lot of people did not speak Hebrew, so they had to retranslate it into the local language. What did Christians bring to the party? Well, their belief in Jesus the Messiah, and also stuff that Jesus gave them, like this meal. So they'd have the synagogue service with this meal of bread and wine that they got from Jesus. Okay? They're not brain surgery people. You know, this is Judaism, you know. Judaism seen and reinterpreted in light of him, what he said to do and what he did. Okay? That's, I guess, where the difference is, sir. When the Christ arrives, Jesus starts changing stuff. Things are not the same. Even Judaism is not the same once Jesus shows up. Okay? So you have the Torah, the 5 books of the Bible, first 5 books. Books of Moses, whether they were written by the great prophet Moses, and I don't know. Most biblical scholars would say no, for a variety of reasons. And they're probably right, I would say. But you know what, if I got up to the pearly gates and found out, God bless you, that somehow Moses was involved, you know, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to freak out about it, you know. But traditionally they're called the books of Moses, because Moses is a major character in them. I mean, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are all about Moses. So there you go. Then you have another section of writings called the prophets. The prophets. Okay? So it's very simple here. The rabbis are collecting stuff. First you have the most important books put together called the Torah. Then you have another section of books which are from men who claimed to have received messages or insights from God. A prophet. That's what a prophet is. Does a prophet sometimes talk about the future and things that are going to happen in the future? Yes. But more often than not, the prophets are simply interpreting current events from the perspective of God, what they believe to be God's message for people at the time. Usually biblical scholars and people who study the Bible don't have a problem with this first bit, that the prophets are speaking about current events. It's the future events they have problems with, and it used to be that, you know, biblical scholars, if I were teaching you, like back in the 70s, I'd probably tell you categorically, no, prophets do not predict the future. There's no such thing as predictive prophecy, predicting the future. Well, you know, I've read enough of my Bible to know that when, you know, Isaiah the prophet says, this will happen, you know, in the future, this is going to happen, this empire will be destroyed, or this city will be destroyed, and then it is or it isn't, you know, I mean, at least I think Isaiah meant to predict the future, you know, and sometimes the prophets gave very specific details about what they thought would happen in the future. Okay, they weren't just like kind of like, well, someone's going to die. Oh, you know, very kind of, could be any, you know, very generic. No, they were pretty specific, you know. Babylon will fall. You know, Nebuchadnezzar will be taken in chains. He will eat grass like an animal. Anyways, so biblical scholars have kind of mellowed out on the futuristic aspects, you know. Said, okay, you know, we have to recognize there are some futuristic aspects. At least the author thinks that he is predicting something in the future. Okay, so that's a prophet. Now, this is my rant. I'm going to give you my rant before we go to our break. But don't think about the break. You got to listen to this, because it drives me crazy. And one of these days you're going to be watching the news, and they're going to have a story about big fat guy goes nuts at Catholic Church, you know? And it's probably going to be me, okay? A prophet gives a prophecy, a noun. He or she, there are women prophets in the Bible, just no books by women prophets, prophecy. That person receives a prophecy, which is a revelation about a current event or something that's going to happen in the future. But the verb is prophesy. Okay? A prophet prophesies by giving a prophecy. I can't tell you how many Good Friday services I've been to, where the priest and you got the dialogue with they read the story of the Passion narrative, and the congregation has a part in it where you have to shout out, certain saying, what I'm talking about. It's kind of like a little dialogue. Someone reads the story. The priest usually acts in the place of Christ and reads all the words of Jesus. And then you got somebody else who reads like the part of Pontius Pilate. And then, usually the people play the part of the congregation or the soldiers, and what they say, yes, no, just whistling in the wind. No one's ever been to a Good Friday service ever. So am I right? Then why don't you nod your head for me? Just give me some kind of feedback. Why are you leaving me hanging? What? Okay. Anyways, and one of the lines is where the soldiers beat up Jesus. They blindfold him and they slap him and they tell him to prophesy for them. Since he's a prophet, he should be able to tell them without seeing who hit them. It's superstitious. Prophesy for us, great prophet. Tell us who hit you without seeing us. And of course, the congregation to a man and a woman will say, prophecy for us. Okay? I let it go. But eventually, Channel 7 News, breaking story, fat guy, middle-aged guy, bald guy, goes ape nuts at, St. Holy Smokes Catholic Church on Good Friday. Watch for it. Watch for it. Prophesy, please. It's not me. It's the correct pronunciation. That's just what it is. It's just people don't know. People don't know how to spell, and they don't know. Prophecy, prophesy. Come back in 10 minutes, please. Somebody's got to remind me. Eventually it's not going to be my fault, and I'm going to start taking some skin off of somebody. Take your pick. Let's see, who can I do it to? Who can I take skin off? Ms. Valenti! You're quiet. Speak up, Ms. Valenti. Oh, did you highlight your hair? The end of your hair? Very nice. Is that highlight, or did you dye your hair and then it grew out naturally?
No, it's called ombre.
Cool. Very nice. Very nice. What was I saying? Oh, yes. To repeat, because I turned on the recorder late. Sorry. Whoever hears this. Yes, the writings, the third section, has to do with all of those books that were neither the law of Moses, did not qualify as Torah, and were not books by prophets or about prophets. So as I said, you get poetry, short stories, history books, books full of sayings like Proverbs, etc. and so forth. Okay, so that's basically the Old Testament, what you're going to find. These three sections. Da, 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 da. In the Christian scriptures, we basically are dealing with four sections. I'll come to that later, I think. Well, maybe not. Gospels. The four Gospels. You're dealing with one book called the Acts of the Apostles, a whole bunch of letters, and then another book called the Apocalypse of John. These are the four sections. Did I put this PowerPoint on Moodle yet? Does anyone know?
Yes, you did.
Has anyone printed it out? Brought it to class? So you could write notes on it rather than having to... No? Might be a good idea. Time saver. Time saver, Mr. Bolke. I'm trying to help. Trying to make things easy. Trying to make them easy. Easier. These are 4 sections of the New Testament. The Gospels come first because, like the Torah, they are kind of like the Christian Torah. They deal with Jesus. The word gospel comes from the Greek word euangelion. Eu is a prefix which means good, and angelion, angel, messenger, means a message. News is how we commonly translate it, but message is what it basically means. The good message. What's the good message? What's the good word? Jesus. So we have euphony. Euphony, from 2 Greek words, eu and phone. What does eu mean? What does eu mean? The prefix eu. Good. Does anyone want to take a crack at phone?
Holy?
Huh?
Holy?
Holy? No, sir. But good try. Phone. Sound. Euphony in English. Good sound. Something that is euphonious sounds good. Something that is cacophonous sounds what? Bad. Why? Because kakos in Greek means bad. So, ever wonder where that saying, that's a bunch of caca, comes from? Kakos, Greek. Bad. It's not a bad word, it's kakos. So, kakos phone, bad sound, cacophonous. But euphonious is good sounding. Good sounding. Country music would not be euphonious. Not cacophonous either. I'm not saying it's cacophonous either. I'm just saying it sucks. Huh? I'll have to use Google Translate for that one. I'll have to see what I can do. But I have to be careful that I don't come up with something bad from Google Translate. Anyways, moving on, Mr. Dunn. I have to go to confession on Saturday. Anyways. I'm trying to think of other words we use. I always use euphony, and I always try and come up with something else. I've got to look up in a dictionary to find some other common words that we would come across for good. Good something, just to give you another example. I can't think of any medical examples. Do you know of any medical words that begin with EU? AU? No. Huh? Oh, euthanasia.
Yeah,
there we go. Thank you. To euthanize comes from 2 Greek words, eu and thanatos. Whoops. I didn't want to do that. Euthanize. To euthanize. Eu means what? No. I just told you it means what? Anyways, good, yes. What does thanatos mean? Do you want to take a guess, considering what the word means? Killing, but death. Thanatos is death. So a good death. So when you euthanize an animal, you're usually not, trying to put them through suffering, Give them a little chemical or something, or drug, I don't know what the vet does, and the animal hopefully dies peacefully. Now, with humans, you can, apparently in some places, you can euthanize if you're in too much pain or you have a terminal illness and there's no way out. You can take a certain concoction of drugs that will let you go on into the beyond and with less suffering or no suffering, or as little suffering as possible. Euthanize. Yeah, I got that right. Okay. Thanatos, which is Greek, which for death. Thanatos. So, Evangelion, good message, which works its way into English as the word gospel. And the Gospels are a type of literary genre, type of Christian literature which has the details of Jesus' ministry and teaching. Notice I don't say life, because they're not biographies. They are a distinct genre. Scholars still debate what exactly a gospel is. Okay, because they're not exactly biographies, but they do contain biographical details. Okay, and yet they're not meant to be like exhaustive containers of Jesus' teachings and what he did either, because they even admit that they don't tell you everything about Jesus. Okay, there's a point to the Gospels, to this genre, which we'll get to, why the Gospels were written and what's the point of them. Don't worry about this, the four holy Gospels. I'll come back to this. But Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you want to know, and you want to know the general dates of when they were written, this is it on the PowerPoint. Roughly. I mean, some scholars will place them earlier, some later. But you can be pretty safe that Mark was written sometime in the 60s. And this is 60s AD, not 1960s. Okay, no. These are not the Mad Men, people. Okay, these are the gospel writers. All right. Matthew and Luke, you could say roughly from the 70s to the 80s, but I give you 80 and 85. And John, 90 to 100. Okay, AD. So where did I put my... there it is. My nose gets very itchy. I also think I have a little bit of a cold, but still my nose gets itchy. Okay. So just know those. Mark is in red and boldface. Does anyone know why? Is in capital letters. Why am I yelling Mark? Why is it Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Why is Mark distinguished? Do you know? Okay, then that Christian church will do you well, lady. Stay where you are, because you won't learn this in the Catholic Church. Hopefully the priests know. But they never seem to preach on stuff like this. Tell anyone. Why is Mark in red and in capital letters?
Did he meet Jesus?
Huh?
Didn't he meet Jesus in person?
Nope. Mark did not know Jesus at all, nor did Luke. What's special about the Gospel of Mark? Huh? Why do you say that? What might prod you to say that? Thank you, Ms. LaCicero. Ms. LaCicero, you not only have eyes, but you know how to use them. Thank you, miss. Look at the date. It's earlier than the others. So scholars date Mark as the earliest. Even though Mark comes second in line, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I'm not going to go, this is not a New Testament class, so I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how scholars know or believe that Mark was written first, but they have, it seems pretty reasonable assumption that the Gospel of Mark was probably written first. I'll give you one hint. Matthew and Luke seem to copy from Mark. All of Mark's Gospel seems to be contained in Matthew and Luke, and then they add on their own stories that they have. So that seems to be, I wasn't there, so maybe Matthew did write first, but, this is just an ordering, okay? It's not necessarily meant to be historical. It's just an ordering. You know, like in the Quran. The Quran, the chapters, the surahs are ordered by length. They're not ordered by date. So there are surahs in the Quran that were given very early by Muhammad that are, you know, way back in the Quran. So it's just by length. Okay? So this is just an ordering. Why is it ordered this way? Don't know. Because there are other orderings that Christians had. You know, you can order it any way you want. But this is, you know, the traditional ordering. But pretty much most scholars would say that Mark was writing first, or that came first, because Matthew and Luke show clear evidence that they had access to Mark, and even seem to have copied his stories almost word for word, adding their own stuff. We talked about this. Well, we kind of got this with with the Catechism, but I want to emphasize that the Gospels are the heart of the Scriptures. Because why? They're about Jesus. If you haven't noticed already, Jesus is the answer to every question. So basically, if you answer Jesus to everything I ask you, you're going to get a lot of my questions right. You know, why are the Gospels the heart? Because they're about Jesus. They tell us about his life. They tell us about his teachings. They tell us about our salvation in him. He is our Savior. They tell the story of salvation through Jesus. So the Gospels are the heart. So they come first. Dei Verbum, in case you're wondering, is a document from the Second Vatican Council. It's an important document. Second Vatican Council, I've mentioned this several times, so I'll write it down for you. It was just a council of bishops held in Rome from 1962 to 1965. And this is one of the documents, number 18. If you want to look this up and just verify that I have the quotation accurate. The Gospels are the heart. This is a statement Dei Verbum. It's Latin. Okay, the Latin title is simply the Statement on Revelation. So it's a statement on divine revelation. It's not very long. If you want to read it, it gives you kind of an idea of what the Church thinks about Scripture and tradition. But the Gospels are the heart, not the letters of Paul, not the Old Testament. Even though the other stuff in the New Testament is about Jesus too, Jesus is the stuff about him directly is more important. And the Old Scripture, the Old Testament is read through the prism of Jesus. So he's the interpretive key for reading the Jewish Scriptures by Christians. Our next book is Acts of the Apostles, which was written by Luke, the Gospel writer. That's why it's Luke Acts. Okay, so make sure you know that. So I'll, ask you that. Okay, Acts of the Apostles is actually part 2 of his Gospel. Luke wrote the Gospel, and then he followed it up with part 2, which is called the Acts of the Apostles. So it deals with Acts by the Apostles. Don't overthink it, baby. It deals with, things that the apostles did after Jesus went up to heaven. Ascension Thursday, y'all. Actually, not always. It actually only deals with 2 apostles in particular, one of whom was not an apostle of Jesus, but whatever. Just go with it. The first half of the book deals with St. Peter, Simon Peter, and then the rest, next half deals with this guy called Paul. Some of the other apostles are named, but they don't really tell us. Luke doesn't tell us many of their acts. I'd like to know what my namesake did. What did St. Matthew do? But nothing. Apparently to Luke, he did nothing, because he disappears. No stories about St. Matthew in Acts of the Apostles, or Bartholomew, or Jude, or James, son of Alphaeus. What happened to them? I don't know. So it's kind of a work of history. It is historical. Luke uses a lot of historical sources in his gospel and in this book, but his main focus is on the 2 who he sees are the 2 main apostles. The first amongst the apostles, who would be Simon Peter, and then this other guy who comes along named Paul. So Acts of the Apostles, since it's part 2 of Luke's work, it has to come later. So scholars would date it somewhere in the 80s, even as late as the 90s AD. The letters, a whole bunch of different letters. Most of them are by this guy, St. Paul the Apostle, this guy Paul. The letters are pretty much dominated by Paul. And then you have other letters that are ascribed to Peter the Apostle, James, not one of the apostles though, apparently James, one of Jesus' relatives, brother of the Lord, the Apostle John, Jude the Apostle, small letter from him, some anonymous letter, the letter to the Hebrews. We don't know who wrote that one because it doesn't say, no idea. It's just out there. And some biblical scholars would actually take the letter to the Hebrews out and put it as a separate section. Okay, because it's so different. It's called a letter to the Hebrews, but it's really not a letter. It's more like a homily, a sermon, something that was preached and written down. It doesn't come off as a letter. It doesn't say, dear so and so, how you doing, whatever. It just doesn't. So, but nevertheless, it's called the letter to the Hebrews. And the letters span anywhere from 50 AD to 125. Notice 50 AD. So just as you should not assume, since Mark comes second and Matthew comes first in the Gospels, that Matthew was written first, because he probably wasn't. You should not assume that because the Gospels come first, they were necessarily written before the other New Testament writings. They were not. We're pretty darn sure that the letter to the Thessalonians, first letter to the Thessalonians, was written sometime around 50 by Paul. So the letters of Paul from the 50s and the 60s are earlier than the Gospel of Mark. And then our last book of the Bible, which is one of the latest books of the Bible to be written, is an end-of-the-world type book, kind of like the book of Daniel, but from written by a Christian. Maybe the Apostle John, but we don't know. Just someone named John. It doesn't say he was an apostle. So we're not sure. But we do know he called himself John. And the word apocalypse simply means revelation, to uncover. I think it's krypto in Greek. But whatever. You're showing off this, you're done, shut up. This means to reveal, to uncover something. Hence, this book, technically its name is the Apocalypse of John, or you could also call it the Apocalypse to John, or the Revelation to John, and people will call it the Book of Revelation. Revelation, one book, not the Book of Revelations. That's when I know how well a person knows his or her Bible. If they say, well, doesn't it say in the book of Revelations? Stop. How often do you read the Bible? People will, try to blow smoke at me, So you're arguing over something, a hot topic, hot button issue, abortion, homosexuality, birth control. Things that people get riled up about. And I'm saying something, well, the church teaches this, and someone will say, it almost never fails, eventually they'll say, yeah, but didn't Jesus say, do not judge, for you will be judged? Everyone seems to know that saying of Jesus. Yes? Haven't you heard that? Doesn't Jesus say not to judge? Where? That's when I pounce. I'm getting ready. I'm going. I'm getting in my sumo pose. I'm getting ready. Because then I say, okay, buddy, you want to throw down Jesus? Where does he say that? Where does Jesus say that? Jesus does say that. By the measure with which you measure, it will be measured out to you. Do not judge. You're right. Although Jesus does a lot of judging. You hypocrites! You brood of snakes! You know? You goats who are going to hell. You whitewashed tombs. You graves full of rotten corpses. Jesus seemed to do a lot of judging. But then he's Jesus. Jesus is Jesus. I just want Jesus to be let loose, baby. I don't care. But he tells me not to judge. So that's right. The person is right. But where does it say that? I test them. See if they know, Ms. Cardenas. See if they know. Because if you're going to use Jesus, if you're going to quote from the Bible, well then, good, let's talk the Bible. I'm very willing to talk the Bible. Very willing. Because Jesus says other things. So why is that saying of Jesus, more important than other sayings that Jesus might have said? Anyways. So, the Apocalypse of John, like an apocalypse, is an end of the world type thing, has filled with symbolic language. Put that up there? No, I didn't put apocalypse up there. I put apocalyptic up there, didn't I, for Daniel? No, I did not. Where's my definition? It's here on my paper, isn't it? Did I forget to put it on the PowerPoint? Or maybe I didn't. Let's see here. Indeed I did. Excuse me. Apocalyptic, a type of literature. A type of literature. I'll write it down. I apologize. I forgot to put it on the PowerPoint. Apocalyptic literature is a type of literature. What is it? That interprets events. Literature that interprets events present and future through symbolic interprets history, through symbolic visions of the future and the spirit world. History through symbolic visions of the future and the spirit world. Symbolic visions of the future and the spirit world. Future and the spirit world. So Revelation, what's it revealing? Reveals the meaning of what's going on, what's going to happen in the future, and what's going on now, through visions usually of heaven, or through symbolism. So So the Apocalypse of John. What is the book about? Basically, most people, mainly Christians, interpret the Apocalypse of John as a book about the end of the world. And so they're constantly looking for, they're constantly trying to seem to be interpreting the symbols for, according to current events to see if they've been predicted, Like when I was growing up, everyone was big on the New World Order. The NWO, the New World Order. We're going to have this union of all the nations on the planet under one government, one universal government, and one universal religion, and there would be the persecution of the church and Christians. Anyways, you just got to go with it. You had to be there. You had to be watching, what was on the televangelists on television and reading the literature, And now, I don't know what people are on to with the book of Revelation, who's supposed to be the beast or the Antichrist. In the Middle Ages, for a lot of Protestants, they read the book of Revelation in the context of what they were going through with the Catholic Church, and so the Catholic Church took on all the symbols were applied to the popes and the bishops, and that what was the persecution the Protestant Christians were getting. So each age seems to interpret the symbols according to, the age they're living in. So when I was growing up, a lot of the stuff I was reading from these preachers about the book of Revelation was, about the Vatican and Washington and the government, the federal government, And George Bush was giving Masonic Freemason hand signs in his speeches, and he wanted to establish the New World Order of the one world government, which apparently didn't come about, And of course the Soviet Union was part of the story, of course the Soviet Union fell apart, so now you have to regroup and revise your interpretations of the book of Revelation, because apparently some of the interpretations of the symbols that dealt with the Soviet Union had to be wrong, because it doesn't exist anymore, Anyways, that's not why the book was written. If you read the book of Revelation, it's written to people who are being persecuted. And it's written to Christians who are being persecuted. And at this time, the persecutor of Christians, at the time the book was written, would have been the Roman Empire. And once you've got that knowledge about when the book was written, the Roman Empire, a lot of the symbolism falls into place. A lot of the symbolism used in the book makes sense, because it's symbolism that applies to imagery used of the Roman Empire, words that are used about the Roman Empire, symbols that are used for the Roman Empire, and it makes sense. I'm not saying it couldn't also be about the future. I mean, there could be things about the future, It does talk about the end of the world and stuff like that, and, the end of all time and what's going to happen, but, doesn't come off as like a blueprint. And once again, who is my yardstick for, say, the end of the world? My yardstick is going to be, who's going to be my yardstick, Mr. Al-Zawagi? Well, exactly, sir. Good job, sir. If I can make my way through, I give you a high five. But here you go. Virtual high five, sir. Jesus talks about the end of the world. Doesn't mention nothing about 7 bowls of fury. He doesn't mention 7 seals. He doesn't mention any of the beast. He doesn't mention 666. He doesn't. Jesus talks a bit, not a lot, but he talks about the end of the world. I always wondered why these preachers don't focus on what Jesus says about the end of the world. They always seem to want to focus on, what the book of Revelation. We have to figure out who is the 666. Who is the Antichrist? Who could be the false prophet? When are they going to come? What historical event shows the inauguration of the end times? I got news for you, people. You okay? You know what the event is that shows the inauguration of the end times? The end of the world? You know what it is? I'll let you know a little secret. I'm not joking. I'm not making a joke, although. Turn your head to the left. He's right there. He's back. That's it. The cross, the tomb, the resurrection, his ascension into heaven, that's inaugurate, at least for the Catholic Church. I don't know about other churches. They might have a different view. For the Catholic Church, that's the beginning of the end times. Because Jesus says he's going to come back. I'm leaving now, but I'm going to come back. So the church looks at it like she's living in the end times already. What are the end times? Waiting for Jesus to come back. The Catholic Church doesn't view the end of the world like it's like one series of events. All of a sudden, everyone's going to disappear. All the good people are going to disappear on the planet. All you Catholics and Muslims and all you other people, we're all going to burn and cry and wail and and be punished and chased by demons with pitchforks and while all the Christians are singing up in heaven. No, It was right now. It's going on. It's going on. The kingdom of heaven is being spread throughout the earth right now. God's rule is being spread. Who said that the end of the world had to happen fast? God bless you. Not Jesus. Well, actually said Jesus said he would come back fast. But the whole process, no one said it had to be fast. It's happening in slow motion. Well, for us, it's happening in slow motion. For God, 2,000 years, maybe God thinks it's fast. I don't know. I'm just reflecting. So that's it. Proclamation of the cross, the tomb, the rising from the dead. That begins the end of the world. It's begun. You're in the thick of it, people. You're in the game. Thank God for that. You're in the game. Whether you do a lot or you do nothing, doesn't matter. You enter. Maybe you'll exit this world as a powerful billionaire, a kingmaker, or maybe you'll exit this world as someone who just went to his or her workaday job and raised a family, or maybe not, maybe single, and you die. And God doesn't care about you? That you're not 100% important to God? Does God like me? I'm still thinking about that, reflecting. Maybe I'll write a book. Nah, I'm too lazy. Anyway. Okay, so end of the world stuff. Okay, some things might be futuristic, in the book of Revelation. But for me, and that's how I read it, and I believe I'm reading it the way the church reads it. It should be always read within the context of Jesus. Okay? And, I'll go first by what Jesus says. And Jesus doesn't say very many specifics about the end of the world. All basically Jesus says is be watchful, be ready. That's all you need to worry about. Just be ready, basically. Okay? That's when these books come out that, 214 reasons why the world will end in 2014. Whatever. I got your Mayan calendar right here, baby. Remember that? The world was supposed to end a couple years ago? Because the calendar was ending, the Mayan calendar. And a few years before that, there was that dude who said it was going to end in 2013. Wrote a book about it. And actually, there were people who really believed him. I remember seeing on television that some guy who was camped out in Times Square, and he had sold all his stuff because based on this guy's book, he really believed it. He sold all his stuff. Gonna end. Didn't end. And this preacher, this guy who wrote the book, apologized. And he apologized, actually, to people who listened to him. He said, obviously, I figured out my calculations of the Bible were wrong. He's dead now. He's since died. Went to the great beyond. But at least he had the cojones to own up to his mistake and say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And said, I'm not going to make any more predictions because clearly I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a good predictor. These guys are always trying to predict the end of the world. Just predict the lottery for me, baby. That's all I want you to do. Tell me what the lottery numbers are going to be. Make me a millionaire. And let Jesus come back when Jesus comes back. But do something useful for people. Make them rich. That's what matters. Okay. No one's going to challenge me on that. All right. I know I'm giving out the grades. I understand. Not going to challenge me. The historical Jesus. Let's see. Maybe we can shake things up a little bit. People seem a little bit... Now you've heard Weird Al. Well, move it on, people. And that image that is there is from a Coptic Orthodox church. It's of the resurrection. Jesus bringing Adam and Eve out from the dead. There's the tomb, the angels at the tomb, the women at the tomb, Church of St. Barbara, Cairo. The historical Jesus. Let me go to my notes here. Modern historical research, history, as we know it, only came into in the modern form in like the 1700s. You had events like the Renaissance and stuff like that. Okay? And you had like this, what they call the scientific revolution, okay, where this scientific methodology is being applied to everything. Not just the study of the natural world, but even to history. History is now done differently. Okay? How differently? Well, I guess the main thing you would say about modern history was objectivity. You wanted to question your sources, make sure you're using the best historical sources. You wanted to get behind your sources to see which are more accurate, which are telling the story more accurately, or which might be telling a story from a particular point of view. What can be proven historically, and what is assumed. What is assumed. So you might grow up believing, well, for example, history as opposed to story. Rosa Parks. What's the story? What's the story? I'm presuming you all know her. Miss Rosa Parks. She is a major figure in American history. Who is she? Ms. Lehman.
She's the one who usurped for the right and would not give up her seat in the bus.
Okay, she would not give up her seat in the bus. What else is part of the story? What's the story? What's the story you know? Don't know? What do you know?
Well, she wouldn't give up her seat on the bus and she got arrested. Because a white woman wanted to ask her if she could take her seat. She told her to take her seat. So no.
Was she within her rights to do that? What does the story say?
No. At the time, African Americans had to, they weren't supposed to have a seat on the bus if there were other white people that needed to
Okay. Okay. Mr. West?
Yeah.
You rose your hands, or what do you got?
Oh, it started the bus boycott of Alabama, Montgomery, no, Selma, I think.
There was a march on Selma, I forget, Montgomery?
It might have been Montgomery, Alabama. So it started the bus boycott.
Okay. Bus boycott by whom? Not by white people.
Well, led by Dr. King, but of African Americans.
Yeah.
And white people as well.
Well, yeah. I shouldn't say not by. I should be more specific. Not by all white people. Some people participated in it. So what's the history? What's true? What's accurate from what we've just heard? And what's not true? Or what's true, but maybe a little off? Excuse me. How would you find out? Huh? I can't hear you. You could Google. But let's say you're a historian. You might start out with that. I'll search it on Google. But how, if you're an historian, research, how would you do it? Okay. You might want to see if it really happened first. Ask people if people are still alive. Look in the records. Be helpful if she were arrested, as the story says. Maybe they took a mugshot of her. That would be helpful. They did. I've seen that. They do have a mugshot of her. Or the court records, when she was brought in front of a judge, they might have court records. They should have court records somewhere, so you could establish that it did happen. But then did it happen as people believe it happened? How would you establish that? You talk to people who were there. Talk to her. She was still living until what? When did she die? A few years ago? So she was still alive. You can still talk to her. Hopefully her memory of the event is good. She lived through it, so she should pretty much know what happened. But you could talk to the bus driver who reported her, the person who asked her to give up the scene. But if all these people are dead, you're kind of limited. But this is what historians do. They're applying a certain methodology. Okay, they're not just telling what they've heard. Okay, or giving belief or credence to just what they hear. But ancient historians, what other option did you have? Huh? Yeah, I mean, all you could do would, you'd listen to the various maybe versions of the story and try and maybe pick apart, especially if the person was there. You might say, well, that's the most reasonable. The person was there, But there might be other details that other people remember, and then you try to fit them in. If there are manuscripts, obviously in the ancient world there aren't going to be photographs or movies, so, whatever. And in the case of Rosa Parks, no one knew what was going to happen, so no one was taking pictures or video, taking a video of it as it was going on. You can visit the site, say if it's a battle or something like that, something that happened. You can visit the site and look at it and talk to people and see if that fits with what you've been told. But ancient historians, those were your limitations. Now, you can talk to people, find out what their story is, but you can also you have a lot more things to verify it with. And that's kind of like what they were trying to do in the 1700s. This is what I've been told. This is the story. Is that what really happened? Can I establish the facts? And as simple as that sounds, people really didn't do that before. People were concerned about facts and wanting to know that stuff happened, but also people assumed a lot of what they were told was simply the way it was. Okay? And so historians start asking these questions. Unsurprisingly, eventually, someone had the bright idea to say, hey, let's ask these questions about Jesus. Let's ask this about some major historical figure like Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? And people went ballistic. No, people did go ballistic because Jesus was different, All right? You can do that to Muhammad. Do that to the Buddha. Do that to George Washington or Rosa Parks, but not my Jesus. Because maybe he didn't do certain things that I hold dear, But nevertheless, people pushed forward by taking the canons of history, the standards of historical research, and applying them to even Jesus of Nazareth. The word canon simply means a standard. It's another word for standard. The canons of history. The word canon. From Greek, kanon. Notice one N. This is a canon, a standard. If you ask for a canon with two N's, well, you're going to get something different. Kind of like if you go to a French restaurant and ask for poisson rather than poisson. If you say, hey, Mr. Dunn, I need a cannon. I'm going to say, well, what do you need? Do you need something with wheels and a big thing, that you can maybe blow up stuff with? Or do you need a standard, a yardstick? Because one is a lot more easier for me to bring you. Not so heavy on the body to bring to you, to get to you, okay? Canon with one end, it means standard. A yardstick, that's literally what it was. It was a name for a stick you used to measure stuff with. A yardstick, okay? So people took the canons of history and historical research, the standards, and applied them to Jesus. Let's apply them to Rosa Parks. And the story that people have told. Because, it's a great story, she was told to sit at the back of the bus, but she said, no, I am a woman, man. I have every right to sit at the front of the bus or at the back of the bus or at the middle of the bus, on top of the bus, anywhere on the bus that I want to. And that's why I asked Ms. Kevitt before, was she within her rights to deny her seat to this person? And I believe it was a white man, not a woman, who came on. Well, that's an interesting legal question, I wonder. Was she railroaded? Because she lost her court case. She was fined for what she did. She would not give up her seat to another passenger who happened to be a white passenger. But the story of, she was in the back of the bus, but she didn't want to go there, Is that true? Apparently not. Apparently she was sitting in the back of the bus. But according to what I've heard from her, I've seen her on TV, and she's been interviewed by people, some white dude came on, the bus was full, all the seats in the front were full of white people, all the seats in the back were full of black people. So, the bus driver was like, you stand up, let him sit down in the black section. So I'm not so sure she wasn't within her rights to say no. I'm not sure she was. Because the law was. What was the law? The blacks sat in the back. It was a crime of sorts, It was, if you tried to sit in the front, you weren't supposed to do that. That was for whites only. Okay? Well, now they're seemed to me like they were changing the rules of the game. They were saying, well, all the seats are for whites only, even the black seats. So it kind of changes the story a little bit once you know the history of it. And she was not doing it to empower anybody, apparently. Her motives were not civil rights at all. According to her, I've heard this direct from her mouth when she was interviewed, she was tired. I forget what she worked at, as a maid or something, but she had a long day on her feet. She was dog tired. And it had nothing to do with civil rights or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or the whole, I'm fed up with being treated like less than a human being. It was, I'm sitting where I'm sitting, not where I'm supposed to sit, and now you're telling me to get up, and I'm damn tired. I've been working all day, So she just was like, no, ain't happening. And she was arrested. Okay? And that became a catalyst that developed into, we've had enough of this, and then as Mr. West said, you had the boycotts and stuff like that. We had enough of this, and it metastasized. It grew from being just a simple, should she have moved? Did she have to move? Because she was sitting. Remember, she didn't come on the bus and say, "I ain't sitting in the back." She went exactly to where she was supposed to go, in the back of the bus. So this was not some great civil rights moment. She had this, I will not sit in the back. She sat in the back. But she was not going to give up her seat where she was supposed to sit for some white person because white guy couldn't stand for a little bit, because all the white seats were taken. So it kind of grew then into the civil rights issue. Okay? Does that change her importance? No. Not for me. Not for history, not for what came of it, okay? And that's why I find history fascinating, because it adds other details to it, which I find the fact that she was already in the back of the bus. But that's sometimes how it is, Sometimes it's not a matter of what you're going to do. You're just put there in the place, and you do something, and it blows everybody's minds. And it blew people's minds that this, little black woman would hauled off a bus for doing what? Nothing. She did exactly what she was supposed to do, but some white person, and it just, how things get to a point where it's like, even something like that, you just set it off. It's just like, enough. We've had enough of this. And then the history kind of becomes a story as well. Okay? We shouldn't be surprised if that happens with Jesus. You know, there are things that Jesus said and we're told that Jesus said and did. Okay, we can look at them historically from the canons of history. It doesn't mean that Jesus did not say or do them, but you know, sometimes you go as far as you can go and you can't go any farther, and that's it. You know, if Rosa Parks were dead, well, she's dead now. That's a resource that's lost to me. If I wanted to historically study, all I could do would be look at videos of interviews with her. I couldn't ask her any questions, you know, myself, because she's dead. She's gone. With God, I hope. I pray. So that's a limitation. Same thing with Jesus. But nevertheless, people try. They will apply history to Jesus, and we'll see what that gives us. People call this study the historical Jesus, rather than looking at him from a purely historical and not a theological perspective. Okay, we're not asking questions like, so much, is Jesus God, but more like, did he say he was God? Whether I believe that or not, I can study that question. You know, in a religious studies course at Rutgers, they can discuss that question. Did Jesus think he was the Messiah? That doesn't mean I do, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to believe it to ask the question and investigate it. This guy, Martin Kaler, is the one who came up with this kind of distinction between the historical Jesus and what they say, the Christ of faith. Martin Kaler is a German theologian. I forget when he died. I think it was 1912 or something. To look at my notes. Kaler, the two dots are an umlaut. It just means it's like an A rather than ah. Kaler. When did he? Do I have his name? 35 to 12. Yes, 1835 to 1912. And he distinguished between what he called yes, thank you, keeps me humble, the historic biblical Christ and the historical Jesus. So he used this idea of the historical Jesus and the historic biblical Christ. German scholars love to distinguish and stuff. The historic / biblical Jesus, the historic / biblical Christ. And this is just an abbreviation for Christos, the name of Jesus, or I should say the title of Jesus, Christos, the biblical Christ. So he distinguished this, the historical Jesus versus the historical / biblical Christ. What was the difference? Well, by the time he was wrote this book in which he made this distinction, which is sometime in the later 1800s, a number of books had been written about trying to historically recreate the life of Jesus through historical research, taking the canons of history, applying them to the New Testament, applying them to manuscripts. There wasn't really much archaeology at the time. In fact, I don't think any. But manuscripts was pretty much all you had. And then trying to extrapolate, to pick out what was historical, meaning factual, and what wasn't. Most of the time you got a Jesus in the mold of the writer, whatever scholar. So when the German scholars were writing about Jesus, you had a very almost Vulcanish kind of Jesus, very logical, very not so emotional. I know I'm talking stereotypes, but that's kind of like how German scholars were. French scholars had a very emotional, very kind of, what's the word? I want to say pietistic, sappy Jesus. A Jesus very emotional, and the values that the scholar might have liked were, of course, the values of Jesus. So, if a person thought or a person was more philosophical of mind, Jesus was like a great philosopher. And so, of course, the historic Jesus must have been a philosopher. Jesus, the person was maybe, didn't believe in miracles. Well, of course, Jesus couldn't have been a miracle worker. So, That's out the window. Why? Because the person didn't believe in it. So it just, people were writing lives of Jesus which were not very helpful. They caused controversy, stirred people up, but they weren't always helpful because they were usually, when you were reading the life of Jesus, it seemed like you were reading more about the scholar than Jesus. What the scholar who wrote the book cared about was what Jesus cared about. And they weren't exactly really trying objectively to get back to the historic Jesus. And the evidence was limited, and that was kind of the point Kaler was making in his book. He says, look, all you really have are the Gospels. Love them or hate them, all you have are the 4 Gospels, really, for our information about this figure, Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? And they're full of stories about Jesus performing miracles and doing superhuman things, and as well as human things, but superhuman things, performing miracles, walking on water, rising from the dead, etc., and so raising the dead. And that's really what should matter at the end of the day, because he was a theologian. For him, the historic biblical Christ was more important than the historical Jesus, because the historical Jesus, what can you know? We have next to nothing. At the time, they had next to nothing, except the Gospels. So the main thing was to accept the message of the Gospels about the historic Jesus. So he was making a difference between historical, the facts you can get at, and then the fact, the historic biblical Jesus, that he died on the cross, rose from the dead. Just worry about that. Because everything else you really can't find out anyways, because you weren't there. Okay? I'm not saying I agree with that perspective, or that even the church agrees with that perspective. The church doesn't have a problem with investigating Jesus historically, just accurately. Okay? But the church doesn't make this distinction between a Jesus of fact, a Jesus of history, which we can't know. He's lost to the mists of history. Well, maybe we don't have a lot about him, but we can know some things. And just have faith in the historical biblical Christ of the Gospels. Okay, well, the church unites faith and reason. Both go together. Both are not in opposition. Used from the perspective of Catholicism. Okay? So this was a reaction against. But in a kind of an ironic twist, the movement, this history of Jesus movement, life of Jesus movement, kind of took Kaler's distinction between the Jesus of history and the Christ of faith and kind of turned it on its head, because whereas Kaler was saying don't over speculate, and he was trying to lead scholars back to the Gospels, okay, his language of this Jesus of history, this historical Jesus, and then kind of a Jesus to believe in, a Jesus of faith, was taken by many scholars, and they interpret it as like adversative versus the Jesus of history versus the biblical, historical Christ of faith. So now you're looking for the true Jesus who really was and did and said things, and you want to find that Jesus and pick away all the additions of the Gospels, put on this real Jesus, usually by the Catholic Church. Catholic Church has done everything. We came up with vampires. Apparently vampires are our fault. Everything's our fault. The Crusades is the Catholic Church's fault. Galileo is the Catholic Church's fault. Everything's the Catholic. Don't worry. And some of it's true. Some of it is the Catholic Church's fault. But, you believe some of these conspiracy movies, it's like the Catholic Church is involved in everything. Vampires, zombies, it's behind everything. Demons. Catholic Church can't even run a website. You ever go to the Vatican website? It's a mess. But apparently the Vatican has all these secret agents, the Da Vinci Code. The Vatican's out there, killing people, sending out albino monks to kill people. That's the Catholic Church, I know. Anyways, but they can't run a website, but, whatever. So people will talk about the Jesus of history negatively in the sense of we want to recover the true Jesus, okay, as opposed to the Jesus who has been encrusted. Like if you go to Applebee's and you get chicken encrusted chicken. What does that mean, Mr. Azawagi? You're hungry. Yes, sir. But what does it mean to say that that chicken is encrusted? Covered in what? Yeah, maybe breadcrumbs, probably breadcrumbs, or Parmesan, whatever, you know. So Jesus, the true historical Jesus, has been encrusted over 2,000 years by the church councils and the bishops and, of course, the Gospels. And the true Jesus, the historical Jesus, has been transformed into the false Jesus, the Christ of faith. So we have to go behind the Christ of faith. Bless you. So the assumption really is that Jesus was just a man for a lot of these scholars. He was just another human being, another historical figure, a man, a charismatic person, a charismatic individual who drew followers to himself, but no more than a human being. He certainly could not be the Christ of the church. That's the assumption. Even before doing historical research, these people, even before, you have to kind of, what they call it scholarly agnosticism. You start out from the vantage point that, at least in the case of Jesus, but in other cases as well, this person cannot be who people said he or she was. So, in the case of Jesus, the church says he's the Son of God. No, he couldn't be that. We have to start with that assumption. Jesus was the Messiah of the Jews. No, we have to assume that he was not, and then prove these things. And to a certain extent, that's logical, because if you can start proving them, like you look at the evidence, it's like, oh, Jesus does refer to himself a lot as God's Son, or Jesus does seem to refer to himself as the Messiah. You know, then you might say, okay, all right, I'm coming around. You know, Jesus thought that. All right. But if you find a vacuum, like nothing, then you have to ask the question, well, why is there this silence? You know, did Jesus ever call himself the Messiah? If he didn't, why? But the assumption, more often than not, seems to be negative, that he was not. And then you have to prove that he was. You know what I'm saying? It's already starting out from a bias. It would be like, my bias as a parent. I'm starting out this course believing that Jesus is the Son of God and he's the Messiah of the Jews. Tell you that up front. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it. I'm not going to fail you if you say you don't believe it. You don't have to believe me. But I won't fail. No. I'm serious. I would not do that. That would be a sin for me to do that to a person. Okay? If you get the grade you deserve. Okay? This is not a you know, kumbaya. Oh, we all agree. Oh, I'm so glad you all agree with Mr. Dunn. Isn't life perfect? My life makes sense now, Ms. Lo Cicero, because Mr. Donalewski agrees with me. But for some people it can be like that, you know. Your life doesn't make sense if you don't feel like you're not always right. I've got to be always right. Gotta be. Fox News tells me I'm always right. Oh, Fox News, speak to me. Fox or MSNBC, whatever you want, you know. I can deflate. I know Benghazi. I know it. Conspiracy, baby. Or 9/11. The government did it, baby. You know, I know. Anyways. Well, whatever. I have to answer for myself at the end of my life. And, you know, not for you. So, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. You know, the church is going to tell you what it believes just by hanging that cross on the wall. I mean, the church doesn't hide things like, you know, you apply to Caldwell College and suddenly you're like, wait, this is a Catholic school? What? Why are they talking about Jesus all the time? You know, I don't think anyone's deceiving you. I hope not. Okay? Like we get you in and then, oh, we got you. It's like a cult. Anyways, ad drop? There is no ad drop here. Once you're here, Mr. Rizvi, you don't leave. You know, and that's true. You know, see the high school down there in the basement. We've got all these people chained up. You know, once you're here, you're not going to leave, baby. There is no graduation. All those pictures of graduation that you see, those are just stock photos. Those are just propaganda you put out there, show these happy faces. You know, no, we've got them. They're not going anywhere, nor are you. Sorry to tell you. We got those albino monks. Okay? But yeah, that's kind of the assumption. Things have changed. I mean, again, people have started to mellow out a bit and kind of step back and say, okay, scholarly agnosticism, can I still be a person who could believe in Jesus and then also apply history? So I don't want to make it totally extreme like everyone's out there to tell you, you know, it wasn't really Jesus, you know, or Jesus really didn't do this. Don't believe in the church. But there is that kind of, you know, I'm going to be teaching a course on Old Testament. The internet's great, so I'm listening to these lectures. I'm not plagiarizing. This is just for my own, you know, I do have my own notes, so don't worry, you know, I do. Well, don't tell the nun, please. No, I'm kidding. I'm not plagiarizing. But I don't have time to read all the books that have been published on the Old Testament in the last 50 years. So I got to, you know, kind of do my own getting up to speed. And the internet's a great thing because you go on YouTube and like Yale has courses online. You know, they have professors who like post their lectures and stuff like that. So you can take a Yale course on, I don't know, microbiology by a Yale, you know, Ivy League professor, you know. It's out there, take notes. And luckily they have one on the Old Testament, so I'm listening to this professor. Don't know what her name is, I have to find it. You know, she seems to be kind of more of that older school of, you know, if you have problems with certain questions on the Bible, it's almost like, that's not my fault, that's yours. You know, if you've been taught the Bible, to believe in the Bible in a certain way, then that brings you to have questions. It's kind of like your problem. Bring them to the section, which is kind of like a tutorial they have outside of the class, kind of like a lab, but, you know, more like another class you have to go to, you know. So people don't ask any questions in the class, and most of the time, the few times that a person has asked a question, you know, she just says, well, ask that in section with the graduate assistant. You know, ask them. You know, because I'm not going to, she says outright, she's not going to answer the question. She's more going to ask you, what in your background makes you want to ask that question? Why would you have a problem? It's almost like you have a mental illness. You know, the way she talks about it. You know, why would you have a problem if I tell you that this is not true in the Bible or this is not historical? Why would you? I don't know. You know, I know in that class I wouldn't be asking a lot of questions because you think she almost talks down to you like you're nuts. And I'm trying not to judge her. This is my impression, you know. So that's how it can feel, you know. To get off on that one. I don't know even why I was saying it. Go back to my notes. Mr. Dunn, rein yourself in. Okay. So already, you know, this person has that, kind of starts out with kind of giving me the message as if I were a student, because I am kind of a student. I'm listening to her lectures and I'm going to take notes on them. Almost like, you know, there's something wrong with me if I have any question about her methodology that she's learned, you know, about applying history, archaeology to the Bible. Any question that I have, that's my problem. Well, a question's a question. It's not a problem. You know, we don't always have to agree, but she kind of gives that impression that if you don't agree, I've certainly had professors like that, where if you didn't agree with them, watch out, you know. I had one professor where he had to do a reaction paper every week on some reading, and I was always getting low grades. Then I thought, you know, and she's gone. See, this is good stuff, Miss Sally. You should listen to this. Might help you in the future. And I was always getting low grades on my reaction paper, but then I thought, you know what? I'll listen to him. Listen to how he speaks. Listen to some of the buzzwords he uses, you know? Because this guy was big into, like, you know, liberation theology and social justice theology, so he used words like, you know, massive, There's never a lot of suffering. There's massive, global, and it's never the earth, it's global. Massive global suffering. Or global suffering on a massive scale. Constellations of power, which is a way of talking about people who are powerful, or governments. Constellations of power. So I started writing, I made a list. And then what I did is when I wrote my reaction papers, I still gave my opinions, but I worked in all these phrases that he used, that he liked to use. And I noticed my grades went up. I noticed. Interesting. I tested. I did scientific method, and I found out something. Okay? But don't forget, for the Catholic Church, even as a religious institution, history matters. Facts do matter. Facts about Jesus, what he might have said and done, if he had said something or done something. These matter. Because the Church loves Jesus and wants to know everything about him that she can possibly know. And wants to know him accurately. I don't want my Jesus. I really don't. I know in my head I've constructed a Jesus that's comfortable for me. I hope not. I hope every now and then God blows apart my comfortable Jesus and hits me in the head with something that makes me question my view of Jesus, so I get more to the accurate Jesus. But the Church wants an accurate view of her Lord. Okay? So not only am I looking at the facts of history, which I'm about to, but I'm also looking at theological reflection. What do these facts of history tell us about Jesus the Christ, or Jesus of Nazareth, I should say? Okay? But just because what I'm going to be discussing is not purely religious, okay, doesn't mean that all of a sudden Mr. Dunn doesn't believe or something. Just means that Jesus was an historical figure, and I'm going to look at some of the historical things we got of him. Like that. The Mandylion of Edessa, which is supposedly a picture of the face of Jesus from, I don't know. It's supposed to be an actual picture of Jesus' face. I don't think so. That to me looks painted. That to me looks inauthentic. But okay, just like with any face of Jesus, I will honor it, But it doesn't look like much. But some people claim it's the earliest portrait of Jesus, 200s to 400s AD. I've looked on the internet. I've tried to track that down and find out how they know it's that old. I haven't been able to find any evidence that it's that old. But that's what they say. They say it's 200s to 400s AD. Okay, I'll take that for what it's worth. But I'll just tell you, I could not find any proof of that on the internet, or any reason why people think it is that old. Have they tested the cloth? Is the cloth that old that this is painted on? Is it really painted on? Is it a painted image? What kind of image is it, But it doesn't, I personally don't believe. It's a nice picture of Jesus, but I don't think it's the actual face of Jesus myself. But whatever. And of course, as with most of these things, the Pope has it. It's in his private chapel. The Pope's got everything, The Pope, imagine if the Pope had a garage sale. I'll bet the Pope would do very well on Pawn Stars. Come in there. Well, let's see. I got a face of Jesus. I got the veil of Mother Mary. Let's see. I got the nails that St. Peter was crucified with. Let's see, what else? I'll give you $20 for it, Holy Father. Could you do a little bit better than that? Could you do maybe $300? Nah, $20 is what I can do. Could we meet in the middle and maybe 100? No, $20 is what I could. No one watches Pawn Stars, apparently. Okay. Anyway, why don't you read this for us, Mr. Alduhi? Festus, the procurator. What? Come on down then, sir. You don't just have to sit. You can move closer. How close do you have to be? Is that fine? Come on down. Come on, my friend.
Yeah.
Let's go. Come on over. See, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. Unless you want it to. Unless you want it to. No. Then we have to work on a safety word. What kind of safety word do you want? Caldwell College. That'll be your safety word.
Okay.
Okay? All right? I'm thinking of the 8 ball, but I'll leave, that might be too much. Later. The 8 ball's for later. I'm making fun of you. I'm just having fun with you. Read, sir.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to read.
Okay, sit down. All right, I spooked him. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm sorry. Mr. Let's see. Does anyone want to volunteer to read? See, this is why I do it. It's like no one wants to do it. I don't know why. So I have to choose someone. Mr. West.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Festus, the procurator,
Good.
was now dead, and Albinus, i.e. his successor, was put upon the road. So Ananus, the younger, the high priest, assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. His name was James, and some others. And when he had formed an accusation against them, the breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned.
Okay, so this is from our friend, I mentioned him before, this guy Josephus Flavius. You can see his dates. He was born just after Jesus left the scene, 37 AD, and he died around 100 AD. This is from one of his books called Antiquities, Old Things of the Jews. And if you want to look it up, it's in book 20, chapter 9, section 1. You can find this online. It's in public domain translation. So, all right. Do I have information about Josephus? I do. Well, I'll save that for a moment. Ananus the Younger. I wonder what his parents were thinking when they named him Ananus. Do you think that they thought that one through? Anything, especially when the kid got to high school? Is Ananus here? Is Ananus? I think we have an anus in the class. There you are, sir. Right behind pubica. Yes, miss. So, no. Ananus is, just a name. Anyways, sorry, I'm not such a dirty mind. Anyways, Festus, the governor of the area. This is Palestine. I have my map. Okay, these are the areas, the dioceses of the Roman Empire. And over here you see Palestina. Okay. So the governor of Palestina was this guy Festus, but Festus died. Okay, so they had to replace him, and they were sending this other guy to replace him. In the interim, in the time it took for the new Roman governor to get there, some members of the Jewish leadership decided to settle some scores. Okay, because there was a power vacuum. So Ananus the Younger, who was high priest, assembled the Sanhedrin of the judges, okay, the Jewish judges, this court of rabbis and priests, mainly priests from the temple, and they brought before them this guy named James, who was, then stoned to death. Okay, so he was considered one of the first Christian martyrs, one of the first to die for Christ. No, he wasn't an apostle. Tradition says that James was the overseer of Jerusalem. He was the bishop of Jerusalem. But how does Josephus remember him? He was the brother of Jesus who was called Christ. Okay? So we get this little reference to Jesus. It doesn't say much. He doesn't say he was the Christ. Josephus says that people called him the Christ, thought he was the Messiah, And that's what made James significant to Josephus historically, that he was related to this man that some people said was the Messiah. Okay? He's writing this book. Did I put that in the PowerPoint? No, I did not. The Antiquities, he wrote this around 93, 94 AD is when Antiquities of the Jews was written. Circa around 93, 94 AD is when Josephus wrote this book. He was a Jew. He was an historian. He wrote, okay? He has a very interesting history I'm not going to get into, okay, but mainly because I forgot to write it down here. But he was writing these books, these history books, for the Romans because he wanted to explain to the Romans Judaism. Because he found that, the Romans he was living amongst didn't seem to understand his people and his religion very well. Okay, so he wrote a number of books. One of these is a history of the world. He starts with, the Bible story, Adam and Eve, the creation of the world by God, and he goes through history up until his time, and that's why it's called Antiquities, the old things of the Jews. Okay, so it's trying to give a history of the Jewish people to show the Romans that the Jews' history is just as long and wonderful and glamorous as the Roman history, that they deserve respect as well. He wrote another book called The Jewish Wars, which I think we come to another quotation in that one, but where he gives a history of the various uprising against the Romans in Palestina by the Jews, called the Wars of the Jews, or the Jewish Wars. So he gives a history, but he's also trying to explain to the Romans why the Jews kept revolting, and also to explain why he kind of helped the Romans against his fellow Jews. Josephus was a survivor. He did what he needed to do to survive, basically, Even though he was a Jew at heart and a Jew to the bone, he still did what he needed to do to stay alive. Okay? So anyways, so we have a passing reference to James, the brother of Jesus. So, now one thing we can say is that since Josephus doesn't need to give a long explanation of who Jesus was, it's just Jesus who was called Christ, he's assuming his readers probably knew something about this guy, Jesus. He's assuming some knowledge, because he doesn't have to say much about Jesus. He says, oh yeah, Jesus, the Messiah guy. Okay, so it helps us assume that the readership of this book, both pagan and Jew, would have known who Jesus was, at least in the bare bones way, why he was significant, and that makes James significant. Okay? The next, I showed you that already. That's from Josephus. The next thing, also in the Antiquities, Book 18, Chapter 3, Section 3, is this, called the Testimonium Flavianum. The Testimonium, it's Latin for the witness of Flavius, the witness of Josephus Flavius. Very famous passage because it explicitly mentions Jesus of Nazareth and gives details about him. I'm sure you can tell already there are people who think that some parts are legit, some parts are not, or maybe added by a Christian author later. And we'll go over that. Ms. Souder, why don't you read that for us? The Testimonium Flavianum.
Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of... Go ahead. Of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles.
Good.
He was the Christ. And when
Pilate Not Pilati. Never. Never. Go ahead.
And with Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross. Those that loved him at the first did not forsake him. He appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophecies had foretold. These and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribe of Christians so named from him are not extinct at this day.
Excellent, Miss. Let me ask you, has anyone ever done Pilates? Any of you ladies, you done Pilates? Have you also done yoga? No. Because I'm trying to figure out, isn't Pilates just another version of yoga? Isn't it just like yoga? Is it stretching? Huh? And what's yoga?
Yoga is like meditation, relaxing.
What do you meditate on?
It's like usually like very soft, low.
Do they give you a mantra? Do you have a guru? Then you ain't doing yoga. Huh? As like a course? I'm just trying to figure it out, because when I see people or seen like Pilates and then I see yoga, it's like, how is that just not like the same thing? It's just stretching. No? No? Okay. Alright, well.
I guess yoga could be, but Pilates is a little bit
Strenuous than yoga? Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I wonder what will be next. I wonder what will be next. I think Zumba has run its course. Zumba. I wonder what will be next. I wonder what will replace the yoga mat. A step? Oh, I'll bet some of you have a step in your history. A stepper. Okay, well, it's going to take too long to go through this, but I will talk about the Testimonium Flavianum on Monday. And, on Monday. There's too much to talk about with it, but I'll go over it. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy yourselves. It's just getting hotter and hotter. Turn on the air conditioning, please.